Hey, there we are. We're back. We're here, and of course we're
Where were we? Were we front?
We're
side.
We were
top,
back. Listen,
bottom.
I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday, and occasionally, sometimes Wednesdays and Mondays with the man who needs no introduction. If you're a fan of this channel, you almost certainly know who my guest is. This is Mr. Stephen Glicker over from Roll for Combat. Welcome, Stephen, back to the channel.
Hello, Kermit the Frog here.
That was pretty good. Kermit says that was pretty good. But no, that was pretty good. You were saying you do crappy voices, but see, you got some skills.
It's not my problem that I can't do voices. I can do voices. I just can't remember what I did.
Now,
and I don't know how to keep track of that.
So I have the exact same problem, and this has led to a joke where everybody says that my characters, especially like in like a more modern day, always end up sounding like sort of like a French Mexican, right? Because I always kind of go like, oh, that is the way we will go, and it's like they always just kind of merge into that. It's like a convergent evolution because I forget what the accent sounded like, and so I kind of go with whatever felt right. So.
I forget, and I don't know a good way to, it's like, I was like, how do I note it in my notes? It's like, yes, you did this one in Bobby, I'm like, who's Bobby? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I basically just do the same accents for everyone, and they know that they're used to it. So,
we're starting off quick, by the way, with a super chat. By the way,
I'm winning.
Yes. So by the way, tonight you could. So the goal of tonight is that I had some of our patrons, and if you want to, go ahead and drop questions in chat too. We will definitely try to get to them, especially if you drop a super chat or a tip. We'll definitely try to get to those. But I basically ask people, hey, ask us questions, ask us for hot takes, ask us for things that potentially maybe Stephen and I will agree on or we won't agree on. And I'm going to try to limit us to about 10 minutes to each topic so that we can actually try to get through, maybe a dozen or more of these. But, the goal here is that, we want to kind of each plead our case for our view of the TTRPG question. And then if that's the case, show your support for Stephen by throwing us some super chats or some super stickers. That'll go into the super chat tip goal. And if you think that maybe Derik and the old KOLC has the right of it, you can go ahead and use our Stream Elements tip down in the link below, or you can type !tip in the chat. That'll bring up a link to our Stream Elements page. So Damian Williams super chatted. He said, Derik, please tell Stephen to read his Star Trek adventure books so he can see how great the game is. I heard a rumor that you said you were never going to read them, or that you would probably never read them.
No, actually, I said I probably will never play it.
Okay.
Is what I thought I said.
All right, that's fair.
But the thing is like and I've said this, I mean, this isn't now I'm like repeating myself because we talk so much, is that I am willing to play all these games. It's my friends who aren't.
Yeah. And I think I think that's a common refrain that you hear from a lot of people, which is, usually the GM might be the one, who is really interested in trying out some other system or trying something new. They're the ones who typically invest more into the game, both in terms of time and money. Mm-hmm. And so they might have a little bit more awareness. They're out there on Reddit or Twitter and they hear about, they're playing 5e and they hear about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or they hear about Call of Cthulhu or whatever, and they want to try it out. But, the players are pretty minimally involved. So it can be.
However, my players are like the hardest of the hardcore Star Trek nerds.
Okay, well that's a win.
Super hard. I mean,
so like when you say
hardcore.
But see, you've already got the buy-in then, because for a lot of people, like you start talking about Klingons and Romulans, and it's just like their eyes glaze over.
Not only these guys, they're so big. They even opened me up to something I didn't even know this. There's a private web series called like the 5-year tour or something. I don't know if you know about this. This guy is like a millionaire, and he decided to film the remaining 2 years from the original Star Trek, because remember it was a 5-year tour and they only did 3.
Right.
He cast everyone the original roles. He recast them, and these are full-length episodes.
You mean he didn't get a 90-year-old Shatner to play Kirk?
No, but these episodes are amazing, and it's like this guy's spending millions on this. Sweet. And it's for no other reason that he just wants to do it.
Yeah. So you've already got the buy-in now. the game mechanics,
amazing.
obviously might be something that they are a little bit more off put by. I don't know. How would you say, because I know that your experience has been not as in depth as say someone like me, but like how has your experience been with sort of what I will call narrative currency games? And for those of you who don't know, Star Trek Adventures is part of the 2D20 system, and 2D20 system has a series of meta currencies. You can think of them like hero points, except basically the game master gets some, they're called threat, and the players get some, which is called momentum. And so when things are going, the players can spend their momentum to help them succeed more, but the GM can spend their threat to introduce new challenges and to create new problems because the threat is growing. And there are certain things that the players will do that will give the GM threat, and there are certain things that the GM will do that will give the players momentum. Do you find that you like those mechanics?
I do, but my players don't remember anything from session to session, so they like fighting.
Hopefully none of your players are watching.
No, they know. They're the first ones. In fact, yesterday, we've been playing Agents of Edgewatch, and Agents of Edgewatch has an incredibly complex story, and it's really good. And we got to this part where there was double crosses and triple crosses and quadruple crosses, and good being evil and evil being good. And they were like, I literally was in the part where like, okay, you tell me what's going on. They're like, I'm like, do you want me to just tell you? They're like, yes. I'm like, fine. I had to like recap everything. And they're like, oh, now I remember. So they don't take notes. Nothing like that.
Really? Interesting. So what would you say then is the primary, because this is a group you've been playing with for over 20 years, right? More or less, right? 30 years.
Yeah.
So what would you say more or less then is their motivation?
They actually like the story. Once I brought it to them, they spent 30 minutes discussing it. They're very much in the now and like, and then they'll remember it. It's hard for them to remember all the details. Think of it from their point of view. We're playing remotely. We're playing VTT. We don't have pen and paper. They're not keeping notes. It's like everything is by memory. And the best way to do it is I sometimes show them pictures. I'm like, remember this guy? They're like, oh, yeah. That usually helps. So they're very visual, and that is really the way to do it.
Yeah. We were talking about working from home before we went live. And I'll certainly say this. I spent many years in the office. It had a lot of downsides. But I will say that like when I was in a meeting room with a bunch of people meeting on a topic, I was probably more engaged and taking better notes than I am when I'm attending that same meeting and I'm at home and I'm eating a sandwich and my dog and my dog is in my lap. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And that's just the way they are. But I know them, and that's the thing is like.
But I don't think your experience though is unique there. I think a lot of people, especially you mentioned playing remotely. I think a lot of people have players that, or maybe even people who play with their players in person, who kind of basically go, I'm not going to work for it. If you tell it to me, I'm going to be entertained by it. And it's important to me that it's there, but I'm not gonna, remember who that NPC was. I'm not gonna put together, wait a second, that NPC and that NPC, I think they're working together, and have this.
Yeah, they don't do any of that. They never do that. But I will say the best part about them, which is, I think, much rarer. So I don't mind like going back and giving them the story and the overview, is that we were in a fight and they were like inches from death, and they're like, great, they're loving it. I'm like, they don't complain. They don't have any issues with getting critted. Like, and they're like, someone dies, they're like, oh, well, like, like they are very much into the fight, however the dice might roll.
Right. So
that is lovely.
The advantage of not being super hyper invested in my character's story arc is that like, you're not like, oh, you've ruined everything. I was going to have this whole redemption arc where my character was going to find their long lost brother and he was going to make amends. And you're like, I'll just make, that's cool. I want to make a kineticist anyways,
yeah, pretty much. That's very relaxing because I don't have to pull punches. I don't have to, I've been into a lot of those games where people are just like, when they get
you ruin their day. Yeah. Obviously they're being babies, but also you feel bad. You're not like a totally heartless person. You know what I mean?
But these guys also have amazing tactics. They were getting their asses kicked, so they what a surprise. They ran out of the room. Hey, and it worked. It's like
Yeah.
it worked. They except for the healer who was by the door and then he was getting pummeled and he's like, oh, I didn't run away far enough. I was like,
Yeah.
that was on you, buddy. But still, at least, that's the other thing. Is like they've learned over the years. It's like you are not, we talk about this a lot in our group. It's like you are not designed to win every encounter. And
that is not something that I think a lot of groups.
Oh, I think no one knows that.
Would know that, or would even they might even tell you. Well, because I think modern role playing games do a really piss poor job of making it both okay and encouraged to run away. Because because and again, I this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but obviously these are D20 games or D100 games or whatever. You're using dice, and that means that things can go wrong. Things can go sideways. People can make stupid decisions. Mm-hmm. Everybody brought fire spells and you're fighting a fire elemental. The fact of the matter is, and this actually is something where I think role-playing can really hurt people. Back in the day, so D&D, Pathfinder, I mean, the DNA hasn't changed that much. It's like chimps and man. It's 98% the same DNA. The fact of the matter is, back in the day, you were kind of like a merc. You were a scoundrel. You were there in the dungeon to explore it, to find lost treasures and gold. If you rounded the corner and you saw a pack of ghouls or a roper or a beholder or whatever, or a entire room full of gelatinous cubes, you were talking about how much you like those monsters the other day. That is one of my favorite. That is one of my top favorite monsters as well. But if you saw those and you said, "Nope, we're out of here," people would just run away. But now in these adventures, you're the heroes, right? You're here to save the day, to be the big damn hero. The game gives you these hero points. The game gives you inspiration. The game gives you this kind of idea of this push, nudge, wink, wink of like, you're not supposed to run away, dude. You're supposed to save the day and, man up and get it done. And so I think a lot of people stick in it because they think running away is actually problematic.
Well, actually, John here says Pathfinder 2 gives zero incentive to run away. No, not at all. The incentive is don't die. And they come back. They just they redo their tactics because in the end, the monsters have strengths and weaknesses. They all do, except for very few. And many times the reason you're losing a fight is because you don't know them or you are not equipped to handle them. Like if easy examples, you're fighting a swarm and if you do not have AoE attacks, you're dead. It's like it's going to be very hard to defeat it. And so you're like, crap, guess we run away and get some alchemist fires and and come back tomorrow, and that happens a lot. And that's how you win it. That's but and you know what? That's more fun because then it's like, ooh, we're using strategy.
Okay, listen, I actually completely agree with you. But if you're playing, Rise of the Rune Lords and you are going to defeat Nualia before she could destroy Sandpoint or release Malfasheknor, the idea of being like, oh, well, we'll just go back, come back tomorrow.
But I've talked about this, is that whenever I do the video game methodology, is if there's going to be a boss fight or a big, ultimate battle, I let them know. I'm like, dude, you're going in. This is it, baby. Like, prepare. And I don't get it's better for everyone. It's like then they mentally prepared. They know, okay, it's the level 8 spells, level 9 spells. It's like use all the scrolls, use all the magic. Like, oh, let's hold it for another day. It's like there's no other day. You start using them, and it makes it more fun for everyone.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And they know they can go crazy. They know they can unload, and I can too, and I have more fun too as the GM.
I think. By the way, Henry gave a $5 tip, so now we are even.
We're tied.
He's just got to get that XP somehow, and I was like, "That's true. I mean, you do. You got to get it somehow." Thank you, Henry. Real quick, I just want to give a shout out. We got John B. Johnny B is in the chat. Welcome, Johnny. Haven't seen you in a long time. Bob is here. Welcome, Bob. Henry, who's already tipping, is here. Howdy to you as well. Damien in the chat already gave us some super chats. Silverwolf and Pulf is here. Glad to see you. Hector needs sleep, but he's here anyways. Salvolre says, hey, what's up, Knights? Pumpkin is here as well. Love to see it. KC, Love Fist. And we got Ellis, and he finally caught one of these things live. Welcome, Ellis. Haza Spade says they finally played Fallout Fabula Ultima. Press start intro adventure the other night. Was lukewarm on it, but the extra info from your stream warmed me up to it. Thanks. It was an awesome game. I love it. It's a fantastic game. And Jonas is here, finally catching an evening stream live. Jonas, glad that you could be here. So tonight's premise is I've got some questions that members of the Knights of the Last Call Patreon asked for Stephen and I, and we are going to kind of, give ourselves 10 minutes to kind of talk about this topic and see if we agree or if we disagree and see if we can convince one another. And if you have a thought or a super chat or a tip and you want to throw your support to Stephen or I, please feel free to do so. That being said, regardless of what you do, you should definitely check out Year of Legends. We have a link in the description down below this, although it's also in chat. Or it's also really easy. It's YOL, Year of Legend, .rollforcombat.com. And that is going to take you over there. It's my understanding you already met your goal. So at this point, we're just running up the score.
Well, no, actually, you have until tomorrow. So one of the incentives, I did a 72-hour incentive. And this is so new that we're still figuring it out, is that it's digital, but it's a lot of digital. You get the PDFs, you can get the Foundry modules. Of course, you get the Path Builder JSON, so you can build all these ancestries. But I was fooling around with animated tokens, and not only do they work, but they look amazing. And I was like, okay, we're going to do animated tokens. Yeah. And
I think that's a great idea.
And you can see them. They're actually there. So if you back by, I think we have till Friday, which is tomorrow, 11 a.m., you get it for free. Otherwise, it's $100. And I think we're going to we're trying to do all the tokens. So that's like almost 200 tokens.
Oh, wow. You're doing that many.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
That's a lot. No, I mean, token. We're trying to do every token.
Again, I respect, we've talked about this. I respect the minimalist VTT, right? Remember when we did I was on your show, we were talking about how they were doing the two different tables. Yeah. But look, I'll be honest with you, there are parts of times where it's like, I want it to look cool and snazzy, and I like there to be some nice graphical fun elements to it, because sometimes that's what the game's about. In person, most of the time, I'm content just drawing with a dry erase marker on a Chessex mat. But I own Dwarven Forge. I own, it's fun. It's cool to pull all that stuff out. And if somebody else is making it for you and you can get it for free, then it's even better.
Well, not only that, I think of the animated tokens as the painted minis of VTTs. It's like people really bring, they bring the painted minis and they want them to look nice and they make them fancy. You can't really do that. But let me tell you, so we have both a token as well as a 3D rendering, and you can look online, you can see it there. The guy's literally standing there with shadow on the ground. And I was like, oh my God, it looks like he's standing there. And I was like, wow, this came out 1,000 times better than I thought it would. And on top of that, to make it even better, because Foundry is amazing, get this, the frame around the token is behind it. So it literally gives the field of depth, the depth of view. So it looks like he's standing on there. And I was like, it actually blew me away. And I was like, okay, this is a game changer, because, not to get into the semantics of video gamedom, but going back to World of Warcraft, you looked at mounts.
Sure.
There was a whole economy of mounts.
Yeah.
And I think this will be a game changer, because if you have an animated token, you're playing with your friends. That's what mounts did, by the way. That was the whole thing with mounts. It's like, hey, where did you get that mount? I want that mount. Well, you're going to play with your friends. You're like, wait, you have an animated token? I want an animated token for my character. That's so cool. And so we're really experimenting, and we're working with Foundry directly. I've been working with the president to show and see what we can do. So
very, very, very sweet. I just had a couple of super chats come in, so Stephen is crushing me. The first actually is you're getting by omission, because it's supposed to go to Mark. I'd like this tip.
You have to go through me to get to Mark.
Exactly.
I pocketed it.
Exactly. Exactly. It works by it's a trickle up.
Trickle up economics.
trickle up economics.
Actually, just trickle down. It went to me, and then trickled down to him, which is nothing.
That's true trickle down. But John did come in with a serious question. And you know what? We'll start here because John very generously tipped $20. Serious question for Stephen. If you were to go about starting your publishing company again, what would you do the same? What would you do differently? John is looking to potentially start publishing games on the side. So, this is a brief opportunity here, Stephen. What would be your lessons learned? What would maybe be one or two of the things that you think you might do the same? What are some of the things that you might do differently? That's a great question. Thanks, John.
Well, the first thing I would do is, there's a lot of answers to that question.
Right. And we're going to try to keep it to 10 minutes.
Well, because I just saw someone mention that Ben from Questing Beasts just had an interview. And I just watched it actually. Right.
Okay. Yeah. With Me, Myself, and Die.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to have him on my show. I keep forgetting to invite him because we were hanging out at a lot of Gen Con. And you have Ben, who's like Kickstarter did
You're talking Knave
like 700,000, and then you have KOLC, who Shadow Dark did like
over
a million, out of nowhere. So
and let's call for what is. These are black and white books that are probably 20 to 30 pages long. Now I think Knave's second edition is longer. I think
it is longer,
but
it's
not like it. But it's not a bunch of classes. It's mostly random tables.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that isn't design work, because it is, and I love random tables. I buy books. One of the things I first got noted from
what I just
Tome of Adventure Design.
The Weird. Do you know what the Weird is?
The Weird, is that a Numenera game?
No, it's system agnostic. It's nothing but random tables. Thousands and thousands of random tables.
Right. Well, I
weird random tables.
That's
all this is.
I've done entire streams about how I love random tables. So again, I'm not
really nice. It's Monty Cook.
See, I said it was Numenera. Because
but it's not Numenera.
No, I know. Cook. But I was saying because I think I had the connection with Monty Cook.
Yeah.
So in any case,
weird clothing for any genre.
So you have Knave, you have Shadow Dark that did extremely well, and these were fairly. Sometimes simplicity is the better way, but they're very minimal games.
They did very well.
But
they also had huge followings. So if you're going to start something new, the number one thing is art is going to cost a fortune. So,
and you got to get art, right? You don't
have to.
I'm not picking a side here, but if you use AI art, you're going to get crucified.
Well, this is what a lot of people do. So, and I won't throw out. It's like, should I throw people under the bus or not? Well, let's just say there's a lot of Patreon out there that put out monthly content for 5e, mostly 5e and Pathfinder, and they use Adobe Art, which is fine. And Adobe Art is, you basically pay a monthly fee and you can use as much as you want and you can find whatever you want, and that's great. But the problem is a lot of this art is AI art now, and there's no way for you to know. It's not supposed to be, but it is. So that's how a lot of these people, or a lot of publishers, get around this art problem, is that they use art assets that they can pay for, like a library, and then just use anything. It's like, I don't even know what it costs. Maybe it's like $100 a month, and then you can just use it forever. And you pay a license fee, and that's it. And there's like a million pieces of art, and whatever you want, you just use. So that's how people usually get around it. The other way you get around it is black and white art, which I just said, which is really cheap. Like black and white art is like, it's like a fifth of a color piece, a fifth to a quarter.
Okay.
And it's also way faster. But full color art takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of money. And you will pay more for your art than you will for the writing easily. So you got to be careful of that. And then for, I don't want to get into this too much. It's like, and then the printing costs, like, okay, I was talking a lot about this because there's been two huge Kickstarters. There's one that's like for Crooked Moon, it's like $2.5 million, and then there's that other one by DM. You guys know what I'm talking about. Not Scotty DM, but there was like a $3 million Kickstarter. That's great, and I'm sure they're going to do very well. If you see how much stuff is in that Kickstarter, it's going to cost them millions to print those up, to ship them, to pay the fees, the tariffs, the warehousing. Like, it's like, I made $3 million. It's like, well, how much is it going to cost you? Time, effort, money, people, and all that to actually get everything in that Kickstarter. Like, I don't know, $2 million. So it's like, yeah, it's a lot of. Everyone said this to me in my first Kickstarter. It's like, don't do too much, don't do too much.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I know better. Well, I did too much, and I learned my lesson. I'm like, yeah, don't do too much. And I still see these, and they're doing great, and they're doing amazing. But oh my God, it is so much work.
Yeah.
To do that one extra thing. Like, you're trying to get the book out, and you got to worry about the dice, or you have to worry about the dice tray, or you have to worry about the plushies, or you have to worry about the posters, or So, long story short, if I was doing it, or if you're starting it up, if you want to publish games on the side, make sure you have something that people want. Like,
does that mean 5e or Pathfinder or bust?
For now, yeah. Or you need to have, because Questing Beasts and KOLC had a huge following.
Right, they already had that establishment. So just do something. Do something simple. Do something simple. Go make a successful YouTube channel, and then you just have all the success.
Yeah.
I mean, because realistically speaking, I mean, we've actually talked about this. Not us, but our patrons and viewers of this show have asked us, like, "Oh, Knights, Derek, you, Bob Smith, are you guys ever going to make anything?" And I, part of me is like, I get a lot of stories from you, Stephen, about just how difficult this damn thing is, and so that always kind of makes me a little gun shy. But the one thing that we always wonder is, like, could we even get this? Well, we have a YouTube channel. We have literally thousands of hours of published videos and live streams, and even I don't know that I could get even 5% of my subs to necessarily, kick or back a Kickstarter for us that, other than maybe like $1. So, good luck. And so it's like, and that's me with, to be fair, a very modest and a very small, I'm not, 150K subs like somebody else. If XP to level 3 did a Kickstarter, I'm sure he would do just fine. He's so many people, but like, and that's with me having to do all this work. If I was literally a complete unknown, I don't know how you do it. I don't know.
I would start off, I would do something small, and I would do something that people want. I would also make sure it's written or nearly written.
That's a good idea.
Like that is, Nave is done.
Yeah.
He's doing a version 2. Shadow Dark is done. She was just updating it. That was something else. Like, I literally just finished fulfillment of our first Kickstarter, which we did 2 summers ago because it took that long. And I vastly underestimated how hard it would be. Now, since then we've gotten much, but now we pretty much never miss these deadlines. I mean, the second one, the Eldamon, that one we missed because of the remaster. So we didn't miss it. We were waiting because the remaster kind of screwed up all of our plans. But our third one, that came out on time. That was the World of Indigo Isles. That came out right when we said it would. And now our Year of Monsters, that came out on time, everyone. The Year of Legends will come out on time because we have it, already half done, more or less. So that's going to come out on time. So that's the other thing. There's just so many things you have to measure. It's like you have to get the things done. You have to actually get the work done. You got to get it out on time. You have to, if you're printing it, you need 6 months to print it, and then you got to pay for it, and you got to find someone to fulfill it. And you got to find the distribution, and you got to deal with damaged books, and you have to deal with people getting the wrong address. You got people that weren't home and they want you to send another copy, but they're in France and it'll cost $60. So who pays for the shipping? It's like, and this is every day. So it's like, all I wanted to do was make games, but that's not what you're doing.
Right. Now you're a shipping and warehousing company.
Exactly. Yeah. And that, I think, is what a lot of people don't realize. That's what I'm saying when I see these $2-3 million Kickstarters. That's great, but I sure hope they have people who can manage them, because that is multiple people's full-time job is now managing that Kickstarter.
Right.
Like, just getting the books done, that's 5%. I always think about, here's a good analogy. You know how they said going to Mars, remember the Mars lander? And they said having the Mars lander land on Mars was 5% of the entire mission.
Right.
They're like, everything else, 95% was just getting there.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
It's like the actual part of getting on Mars was and doing the science was 5%.
Yeah.
That's you doing game publishing. It's like, oh, I just want to write books. Great. That will be 5% of your job. 25% if you're lucky.
Right.
There's another, 75, 80, 90% that is going to be nothing to do with books. But that, for me, is what Mark does. Like Mark, he writes books. He uses his time. He writes and he talks to people. That's his full-time job. My full-time job is everything else.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So.
Oh, great. Well, that's great. And it took exactly 10 minutes. So what a professional. Okay. So let's get to our first question, which came out of our Nice Last Call Patreon, which is, what is more important? What is most important in TTRPGs? The setting or the mechanics? And there's a follow-up here. It says you have to choose one of them. No cheating by saying that they are both equally important. I think this
mechanics done. I'm done.
All right.
Well, because you can put the setting on any mechanics, more or less.
Yeah, but you could put the mechanics in any, the setting.
No, you can't. No, you can't. Because we had a whole thing about that yesterday because we were so our chat yesterday was about co-branding, and we were trying to think of, can you co-brand various things for Magic the Gathering? And we were trying to figure out D&D, and it turned out it was much tougher than I thought. Well, I guess that it goes against my thing.
Yeah, see?
Well, you're right. Okay, well, anyhow, my point is, for me, mechanics, and because the mechanics is the heart of the game.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a great fundamental question. Now, there are people, including illustrious Ben A from our Patreon, who said mechanics are setting, and setting is mechanics. And I do think that is true to a certain extent. And I think there are definitely games where if you look at the mechanics of the game, it actually does tell you or imply a lot about what the setting of a campaign is. But at the same time, I do feel like if you have an interesting idea for a world, or a situation, a place, like you could take the basic concept of Westeros, right? The basic framework of Game of Thrones, 7, noble houses all competing for the king has died and now they're all jockeying for position. You could play that with a lot of different systems. You could play that with D&D. You could play that with Pathfinder. You could play that with Blades in the Dark. You could play that with Dungeon World. You could play that with, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different game engines that you could put. And I think that the thing that really makes that game memorable is that sort of story and settings that come in. I mean, yes, there are, of course, those amazing one-off moments where somebody's like, remember that time I crit that ancient red dragon? But it's probably the reason they remember it so cool is because fighting that ancient red dragon was important in the context of your setting or your story. So I'm a mechanics guy. I like games, but I'll play a board game that doesn't have a setting just because I like the mechanics is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But
when we were talking about, it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, is that we were talking about, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about why science fiction TTRPGs don't work.
I saw that part. And I thought you were right.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but that's an example of where mechanics really have to work with the setting. Like you cannot take the world of Star Trek and put it into 5e. It simply won't work because it won't work. I mean, it's like one's a high fantasy and one's science fiction, and it's apples and oranges.
Right. I mean, look, I think that mechanics, and by the way, this is something that I will say is that I think is incorrect. A lot of people look at games, especially D&D 5th edition, and they say this is a generic system. No, it is not. 5th edition D&D definitely implies a lot.
Oh no, it's a high fantasy.
It's a high fantasy kind of superheroes, zero to hero type progression. It's definitely the case there. So,
I mean, I like, and I also think it's how you tell the stories. Like if you want to have a narrative based, like what you were saying, if you want a narrative based story, then setting is more important. And I forgot where I was watching this. I was watching someone else who was saying, maybe it was you. I think it was you actually, who was saying that 5e has turned into storytelling.
Sure.
With an occasional fight. And even those fights are sort of like hand waved in a way.
By the way,
I just want
to add to that. I saw a poll on Twitter or Reddit, and it said your party is fighting some monster, and they're like, when does the monster die? And one option was when it's at 0 hit points. One option is when I think it would be like when I think when the party is about to die, and the third option is in the 3rd or 4th round because the combat has gone on long enough. And trust me, the one that it lost the most hit points was not winning. Right.
And that's right. So if you want narrative, then setting is more important to you. But my players,
right,
mechanics is God, and they are rules lawyers. One of them is a lawyer. Like to them, it's like that is all that matters, and they're very much by the rules, follow the rules. For better, for worse, for good or bad, whether it can hurt them, and they're not ones to complain. They're like, that's the rules, like they are very strict, and they play by raw. And they won't even bet. I've even offered the bend it. They're like, no, like they do not want me to bet. Like they're very strict. So I was like, fine, And to them, the mechanics are important. So I don't think there's an answer, but I do think that they go hand in hand, and that you need to build mechanics for a setting and vice versa.
Right.
Because
I think again, by creating a mechanic, you are saying something about your setting. Like for example, a game I always like to tout on here is Legend of the Five Rings. Well, Legend of the Five Rings has a very complex system of mechanics around your honor and your honor score. But that tells you a lot about the setting. If the setting didn't care about honor and honor wasn't important, then it wouldn't matter. But at the same time, if the setting tells you, this is a common complaint that I have, the setting tells you honor is everything, honor is very important. But if that isn't reflected in the mechanics, if it is just sort of like hand wavy, I think the game loses a step. This is one of the reasons why I say I like a diverse array of games, because I do think that there are some games that can do certain things better than other games. All right, great. Let's see. Now this is a sort of I don't know how often you do this, Stephen, so this is a good question. So the question is, how much is too much? When do you stop hacking a system and start looking for something that does more of what you want? Now, I know your group has been a D&D and Pathfinder group for a very long time. But how much rules tweaking do you guys actually do?
Zero.
None.
So, well, it's a weird thing to say because zero, yet I publish products. So, and we were playing games where people were playing my dragons or my elemental avatar. So is that hacking the system? Hard to say. I don't know.
I mean, yes, it's a professional hack. Right. I mean, yes. I mean, I guess my thing is like, so let's look. You guys have been playing Pathfinder 2. If you guys don't know, you can check out Stephen and his group. They play on their channel on Roll for Combat. Yeah. I think those are live. I didn't know if they were recorded or live, but yeah, they're live.
But they're both. They're both.
Okay. And they're playing Pathfinder 2. So are you telling me there's nothing in Pathfinder 2 that you don't use, that you don't house rule away?
The only thing we did was for Agents of Edgewatch is I added a badge that would automatically do lay on hands for them, and also made all of their. So the biggest issue with Agents of Edgewatch is you play cops, but how do you play cops without killing people? So it automatically turned all their damage into non-lethal.
Okay.
And it automatically also gave them a ability for lay on hands once per day that they can either give to themselves or someone else. That was it. And it also kept them on the side of right. So if they started to waver, it would sort of like beep, be like beep, 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 beep. It's like, dude, you're going evil.
Do you remember the the phylactery of faithfulness from like 2nd edition or 1st edition D&D? Yeah. It was like a phylactery the paladin could wear that if they were about to do something that was evil, it would like beep at them.
Yeah, that's it. And it actually solved a lot of problems. And not only was it a hack, but here's an unofficial hack, is that I then showed it to Patrick Rennie, who made that adventure. And he was working for me at the time. I came up with this, and he's like, damn it. I was like, I wish you told me before we published it, because that's great. Yeah. And I think they took it because supposedly that is, as someone told me, that they took my badge idea and they put it into what's the tournament of champion thing?
Ruby Phoenix.
They said they put in the Ruby Phoenix, and I know he worked on that one too. Patrick worked on Ruby Phoenix, so I bet you stole it and put it in there. But that was our big hack, and that was really just to make the setting work.
Got it.
And here's the funny part is, I mean, this is a bit of a spoiler, is that they lost it and they were kicked out of the force, and now they're like, and like, where's my healing? And they've been doing non-lethal damage and taking people in for like 2 years, so they're like, we can kill people now. I was like, yeah, like, huh.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
weird.
really fascinating because they changed their whole method. Other than that, nope, we don't. I don't do anything, but I also have a cheat that no one else on planet Earth has, not even you. Maybe you, Derek. Is that when I have a problem with the rules, I just write Mark and ask him. He tells me how to adjudicate it.
That's true. That is true. I mean, obviously my take on this is this. Well, let me be clear a couple things here first. First, I want to shout out to Matt W. Tipping, that's going to the Derik Fund, $25. Thank you for that. Very generous tip. Matt says that he missed Tuesday's stream where we talked about 4th edition. We made a 4th edition character. 4E rules, go Derik. Thank you, Matt, for that incredible support.
I like 4E.
There's a 4E question. We'll get to it. So
okay.
What I'll say about this is this. I think that, when you think about materials science, right, there is people talk about stress and shear loads. And like, if you have a steel beam, right, obviously it has a little bit of give. Different steels and different materials can give more, but they might not be as strong. They might not be as rigid. And there's a certain point at which if you bend something, it doesn't bend back. It's permanently bent. And obviously there is a point at which a game can break. There are some games that you can bend, and there are, every game can be bent to a certain degree, and you can push it to go and do something a little bit different. But I do think that amount that you can do is much smaller than people give it credit for. And the reason I bring this up, and not to sound dismissive of all of you, but I think most people do not have the clarity to understand how interconnected so many systems are within these games. These games are designed by a group of very smart people who put a lot of time and effort into it and a lot of play testing. And when you think you can come in and say, oh, I'm going to get rid of multiple attack penalty because my players don't like it from 5th edition. Okay, you can do that. But let me tell you something. That you're like, oh, people will hit more. Yes, but it will also essentially, fundamentally, you might as well just, the rest of the game is just a crapshoot, right? Like you don't understand how much of a size difference you've made for that. And I get that there are people who do that and have, like a lot of things, but like, it's difficult. It's tough. And, don't get me wrong. There are people who go out there, people who hire Mark to go right for them, or these people who really spend a lot of time. And so I'm not saying that there are people who can't do it, but most people do not. Multiverse says most people barely read, let alone do the math and check out the work. This is fairly accurate. So while I think that's fine, if you don't care what happens to your game, right? Like if you don't care if your game is falling apart, then go for it. But if you are bending it and changing it and hacking it, and then you're still expecting to get the same results out of that game engine, you've voided the warranty after a certain point. Like, yeah, I'll give you, like,
I was just gonna say, it's so much more. These rules, everyone thinks, it's like anything. It's like people think, what's that setting? It's like people who think, oh, they're very good at something with no experience, and then the people who, and then after they work with something for a couple of days, weeks, months, they realize, oh my god, I knew nothing. And I forgot what that's called.
Oh, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
It's something like that, yeah, where
right.
you think, even though you think you're an expert because, oh, I use this, therefore I know how to use it.
Yeah.
And no, you don't. You really don't.
You quickly get to like, this point of, where you're way overconfident in your ability.
Exactly.
And then you start to learn enough to know that, it's that great line from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. True knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing.
That is a great, yeah. And the thing is that, like, we did 2 new classes, and it's hard enough to do a class, but then we did a class with all these new mechanics and with Eldamon and having, it's basically like a brand new type of magic user with the pet class. We had 100 play testers over half a year testing this, thousands and thousands of hours. And it's like, it took a long time, I think, to get it just right. And and I think if people will be like, this is wrong, I'm going to change these 5 things. I'm like, good luck, man.
Right. Again,
it's like good luck.
So, but you know, and then the other thing I'll say is this: everybody, if one RPG was out there and could do everything, then there wouldn't be a need for other RPGs. The wall behind you should be testament to the fact that there are a lot of smart people out there who felt the same as you. And then they went and they did all the due diligence, and they maybe had the time to think up these ideas and go ahead and create their, you know, Seventh Sea, Broken Compass, Numenera, Call of Cthulhu, Avatar Legends, whatever, because they said, we think there's a way to do this better. So, yeah, that's kind of basically my take on that. Ooh, this is a good one.
But long story short, I don't actually hack systems. And when I do it so rarely because the other reason is we forget what the hack was. And then it messes. No, seriously. No, it's actually like every time they use the badge.
Yeah.
And I mean, they used it for 2 freaking years. So like, how does it work again? I'm like, it's one rule. It's one rule and no one can remember it. And it's like mind boggling. Imagine you had 20 home runs. Like no one will remember these things. My players won't.
we had a couple good we got a couple good chats here where it's like Dan says it's like when people give substitutions for every ingredient in a recipe and then give it a 2-star review. You know, I changed this, I changed that, and it tasted terrible. And you know, Henry definitely is right. The less you know, the more you overestimate your own competence. Absolutely. And KC is confirming that it is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And you know, Jackal Torn Moon says and so we have a channel in our RPG in our Patreon. By the way, Knights of Last Call Patreon, patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. We do have our own private Discord. It's not public. You have to be a member. But we do have one called RPG Cringe where we post, you know, cringy stuff from the RPG space. And I said, I posted the other day, I said, I won the channel. I screenshotted this from Reddit. And the title of this was, they're like, I need help trying to design a role-playing game, but I've never played an RPG before.
That happened. Wait, I got one better.
Okay.
I got something similar. So I went to GDC, the Game Developers Conference. This is a long time ago.
Okay.
We're talking about
by the way, GDC, if you really want to get good at game design, go watch every single GDC talk.
Oh yeah. I went for 20. Actually, I stopped going because I learned it all. How about that? No, seriously. Actually, they started to repeat themselves. But I went to GDC for many years. And I was in a talk. Now, this was about 2003, 2004, right when MMOs were really getting big. And I was in a roundtable discussion, and we were talking about designing MMOs. And I was working with Blizzard World of Warcraft then. And they were saying there was a guy there who's taking notes and asking a million questions. And he's like, oh, yeah, we're building an MMO, but I know nothing about video games. I know nothing about MMOs. And I'm like, we all like looked at him like, what?
I mean,
like,
there's a small part of me that goes, you know, that's kind of cool. Like you're not biased by any of the existing, you know, everyone, you know, the sacred cows. You don't know what they are in the space. So there's a little bit of an element there of where I say that's pretty good, but that is pretty terrifying in the.
Yeah, it was like we all looked at him. I'm like, dude, this is the highest level of video game there is as an MMO. Like, good luck. Yeah. It's like start off with something a little easier before you get to an MMO, like especially back then when the technology was still really new. I think the guy never, I never heard of anything ever he did, but and the worst part is he was asking all the questions and he's like, and it was simple stuff. Like, how does this work? How does this work? Like, dude, everyone here is like a publisher. We've been doing this forever. We have slightly more advanced questions we want to start talking about.
Right. What is a loot drop? Taking notes. Shout out to Barbara Chenyu, who says, can I say that in 20 years of TTRPGs, this channel, these conversations, they really shine a bright light on intuitions that I've had for years, but I couldn't talk about with anyone else. So thank you for that. That's pretty good. But yeah, so the next topic, the next question is what are, and again, we're not, we could get hot takes here, Stephen, you can play stuff close to your chest. What are some trends that you've noticed in the culture of TTRPGs that are good or bad? Good or bad? Well, I'll come out with one. I mean, this has always been kind of true, but I'm going to come out with one, which is to say, I think that people are more selfish in their expectations out of the game than ever. These are always supposed to be group activities. It is supposed to be a communal thing. One of the things that I have always told people is your first priority at the gaming table should be to make sure that everybody else is having fun. The second priority should be make sure that you're having fun, right? So I'm not saying that you need to ignore your own personal stake in the claim, but your first goal should be to make sure that you are creating a fun, positive, involved space for the people at the table with you. So that is definitely.
I've said it many times, and I'll say it again. My favorite quote of all time is Oscar Wilde. There are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what one wants, and the other is getting it. And I think about that every day. And because when I was a kid, and we were the geeks, and we were the nerds, and we were the outcasts, and I'm older than you. Easiest way is I grew up I'm the exact same age as the kids from Stranger Things. That I grew up in the exact same era that Stranger Things took place in theory. Like they were my age. I was their age when where they are in the show. So I graduated in 88. So, the 80s was my elementary school and high school and stuff. And back then, like, remember that scene when they all dressed up as Ghostbusters and they go to school and they're freaking losers? Like, that's me. Like, that was totally us, And I was in the Dragons and Dungeons Club because they didn't know what it was and they put that in the yearbook. And it was all guys, there's no women in there. And I told you, like, I would be in these, student organizations like chess club and stuff. And not only were there no women, but the one woman that played with us was not allowed. Her father took her out because it wasn't ladylike.
Right.
So I always thought, man, wouldn't it be great if this was more accepting and like the world knew how great this was and how much I loved it. And now we're up to superhero fatigue. I mean, oh my God, there's I never thought I'd be the day. Way too many superhero movies, way too much geek culture. Everything is geek culture. I'm like, enough with it already. Can I go back into the closet? Can no one know about this?
Yeah.
Which is back to Oscar Wilde.
Yes, exactly. Because I remember the early 2000s, right? When you had The Matrix, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter.
Right, that's what it was. I remember that.
And that was like the coming out of the closet.
That was the coming out. That was completely the coming out. Yeah. Lord of the Rings. When I saw Lord of the Rings and it was full.
Yeah.
And people are talking about it, and then it sweeps the Oscars.
Sweeps the Oscars. Yes. That was
swept. Most wins ever in history.
Yeah.
Like Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And it blew I think it won 13.
Yeah, 13
awards.
of 13. It went 13 for 13.
Yeah, my memory's good.
Yeah.
And what happened there was,
and by the way, not best costume design and best.
It won everything.
It won like best director, best.
The reason is because it was nominated 3 times and they couldn't give it the first 2 times, right. So they felt they owed it.
Exactly.
They did. Which that's how Hollywood works.
Which is how Hollywood works, which is fine. Yeah, like I agree with you that it is. It's one of those things that unfortunately, it's like cool to be nerdy, and like it's a little weird to me sometimes. But I do think what it does is it people have this sort of. I mean, again, it's going to sound gatekeepy, but there was like an element before of where like you had to like earn your nerd cred.
You're 1,000. I was going to say, you and I mean, people kind of cringe when we're like bragging, but I was like,
yeah,
we earned it. Like we had to pay our dues. Like we had to go through the shit to get where we are. Like it wasn't easy like it is today, where where it's cool to be geeky. It's cool to be a nerd.
But that extends even to TTRPGs, right? Like TTRPGs, like if you go back to first edition, right? Like it was almost like a tome of forbidden lore, right? Like you had to be like smart, quote unquote, you had to be a book smart nerd kid to be able to like fully understand the game, and it was like, you'd show up and be like, oh, you're playing that class. Everybody knows that class is in sphere. You know what I mean? Like I'm playing a wizard. Right. That's because like there was this element. Now the game is like, hey, it doesn't matter if you play or you don't play. It doesn't matter if you read the rules or if you don't read the rules. It doesn't matter if you pay attention or if you don't pay attention. Come on down to our game. You're going to have a fun time. Just buy a book. And it's like, part of me is like, it's almost like it's too accessible. And that means that you get a lot of people who are entering the hobby, which is great. But a lot of the people that enter the hobby are also pretty, lukewarm. They're not in it to win it, like I am. And so it can create this weird juxtaposition for me where like I look around Gen Con and I see people who I know are like we're all at Gen Con, But like, if I ask you to name me, you know, which would you rather have, you know, Orchrist or Glamdring, they might be like, what is that? You know? And so it's like, that's kind of one of those things where I kind of go, you know, eh. And again, I get it. That is me being very gatekeepy and bad, but that is how I feel. I mean, obviously, to the points that you were talking about, I love seeing the diversity. I've talked about that on your channel before. I grew up in a time where everybody pretty much was a guy. We usually had like one girl in our gaming group, like at any time. Like they would come, they would go, they would come, and then sometimes it would end up being a girlfriend or whatever of one of the other players. But even my girlfriend once or twice. But like now it's like so much different, you know. And I see so many gaming groups that are just, you know, full of diversity and color and gender and, you know, sexual orientations, and I love it. But but that's not the part that I'm gatekeeping about. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care what your sexual orientation is or what your skin color is or what your gender is. I just want you to be like, you know, I just want you to really earn that nerd cred, you know.
Hold on. There's a movie I'm trying to think. There was this movie that came out maybe about 7 years ago. Maybe if anyone's really cool, I'm trying to find the name of it. It's about this guy who's a dungeon master, and he's really geeky, and he's playing with his friends, and they're all really geeky, and he finds out that like someone else, he like goes to the, you know, the local store, and they're of course like talking nerddom, like, you know, being high-end nerds and like really being gatekeepy, and then someone comes in and this guy's like really cool, and then he invites this dungeon master who's a huge geek. It's not Big Bang. This is a movie, by the way. And then he goes to the party. He's like, invites you to the party, and everyone at the party who's geeky is chic, and they have tattoos, and he's like a real geek, and these are like the geek, zero charisma. I think that's it. Yeah, zero charisma. And I think about that a lot. It's like, it wasn't a great movie, but it's about how the two cultures of geek and wannabe geek, like the cool geek and the geek. Yeah, that's it. Zero charisma.
So the closest example I can give to this is I've heard Bill Burr.
That's a great movie to see. I don't think it's a great movie to see, but to see the gatekeeping and how the geekdom of being a geek has been co-opted and like taken over by cool people.
Right. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be cool to play, but Bill Burr, I've heard give a rant before about why he doesn't go to Super Bowl parties, because Bill Burr is apparently a big football fan. And he goes, no, I'm not going to a football party, you know, Super Bowl party to watch a bunch of people pretend to know anything about the game that I care so much about. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been in that situation before where, like, you know, someone's like, oh, you should come do this thing with me. I'm like, you and your friends are all really deep into this, and you're like, I'm not, and I'm not going to be. And quite frankly, I'm not prepared to put in the time and effort that it would take to be at that level. You know, there have been times before where I've asked friends to play like a board game with us. And he goes, no, I know that you guys take that game very seriously. I don't. And I feel like I would just be kind of shitting on the game. Mm-hmm. I don't care that people are joining the game, but it's like, you know the rules, read, be aware of what's going on, put thought and presence into your gaming, whether that's mechanical, role play, whatever. You know, don't just be this like passive person who shows up just to say, checkbox, I play D&D. I think it's just like, I want to see more involvement from the people who are involved.
Well, I actually don't have, okay, you know, I'm a huge baseball fan.
Obviously.
And I love
Diamondbacks and
Texas.
Not
actually,
Phillies.
I'm very happy.
Phillies.
I'm actually a big Diamondback fan since their inception, because they beat the Yankees. So ever since then, I've been a huge fan. So, and they were last place team. They won 84 games. Everyone's like, oh, they'll never make it. I'm like, yes, they made it. Plus, I hate Philly. Anyhow, I have no problem going to games and sitting there, because I know a lot of people don't like or understand or want to know baseball. I'm like, I have no problem bringing people to the game and explaining it to them and spending the time and going through it. What I won't like is and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that in all aspects of my life when it comes to geekdom. If they want to know or want to learn about it.
Right.
But if they're going to be, oh, I know this and I know that and I know this, and they're pretending they're the quote experts.
Right.
And I was like, please.
Yeah.
Like, no. you're not. And if you're going to start acting like that, then we're going to, it's like, then I guess you get taken down a notch.
Now, this next question is interesting because, apparently this came up, I guess, in a past thing, or in our chat. Maybe you were just giving us things. So, somebody said a question: why are you such a little beep when the subject of 4E comes up? Show me where the 4E hurt you.
Are you talking to you or me?
I clearly, I think they're talking to you. Yes.
Oh, you know why? Because, all right.
Now look, story. Yeah, I want to hear the story time. We got 10 minutes.
All right, here's story time. I go to Gen Con. It was one of my first Gen Cons, and on the key, it said like, "Get ready for 4E," and I was like, "Ooh!" And I remember that I got the key card. I knew what that was. I kind of knew because remember, the internet wasn't quite as big back then. It was like we weren't tapped in like we are now. So
right. There was actually mystery and right. Unknown things. Right.
Right. There was actually mystery, and who knew? And I was playing. I was literally getting up to go play Living Greyhawk at 8 a.m. I remember being in the hotel room at like 7 a.m. Like, I'm getting up at 7 a.m. and like, taking a shower. I'm exhausted to play Dungeons and Dragons.
I made that mistake. I made that mistake once and never again.
I'm such a loser. But then you get there and you see 1,000 people waiting, and it just energizes you. You're like, yes. But I remember I was so excited. I couldn't wait for 4E, and we were playing Age of Worms, which is 3.5.
Yep.
And I got my group excited, and we're like, we can't wait. We're all into 4E. And then I get the books, and I'm running people through the games. And that's where I went from. Now, remember, we went from first edition to second to third and 3.5, and we loved each one. And this is the first one where we're all like, like it's okay, and it was just, they had a lot of trouble with it. Like, they had a lot of trouble, and they were like, and I remember a good friend of mine, after a while, he's like, you know what? I just don't like it. And
why? I mean, that's fine.
I don't know. That's him. That was him back then. I'll tell you why.
What do you think? Because no offense to your group, but your group sounds like the type of people that would really like a game that was, gave you a lot of cool, fun options to use on combats. They
loved the combats.
Okay.
But there was a lot of issues with the mechanics for role playing.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Show me the mechanic for role playing in Pathfinder. Show it to me. Show me the mechanic.
Well, now keep in mind, this was 20 years ago. No. Well, there are mechanics. It's just that there's mechanics for everything, for better, for worse.
No, but where's the mechanic for role playing in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? I must have missed that chapter.
Oh, it's 2nd Edition. Oh, yeah. You know what? We were playing 3.5 at that point.
All right, fine. Where's the mechanic for role playing in 3.5?
Well, it was a lot of the traits, a lot of the, all the skill checks. A lot of skill checks were used.
But all the skill checks, all the skills in 4th edition are the same skills that they have in 3rd edition, except for you couldn't be profession baker. They got rid of that.
I don't remember exactly.
They got rid of the profession.
It's been so long. And this is one of the only times I was not the GM, because this is what ended up happening, is that I think what hurt me is like, show me where it hurts you. It hurt me is that I was really trying to sell it to my friends and they didn't want to play. And I didn't GM it, and we stopped. And it was actually a little hurtful. But I'll tell you, the good part about it is that Seth decided to run a campaign from 1 to 20 of his own, and it was excellent. And I was a player. I got to play a sorcerer, as people like sorcerer,
right.
And
arcane blaster.
Oh, it was so much fun. And I loved it. And it was great. It was a great campaign. It was so much fun. I've talked about that campaign many times, is that we had the impossible rolls were constantly happening. It was like 1 in 10,000, and it would happen and then happen again and then happen again. And I had people who were there. I got proof, man. I could tell. And it was incredible. I had a lot of fun. But then I went through all the pain. I remember then they changed 4E, and I would go to the conventions.
That's fair.
And no one wanted to play. Like, it was just like, and at that point in my life, I felt like D&D was dying, and it was depressing. It was depressing. Here's something that's been part of my life, and it's dying. Dungeon was canceled, Dragon was canceled, and let me tell you, when Dungeons and Dragon were canceled,
And by that, by the way, folks, he means the magazine,
the
Dungeon magazine, Dragon magazine.
I seriously was heavily depressed. Like I loved Dungeon magazines. I look forward. I know I got a million of them over there.
I got a million of them.
Wait,
too.
I got a good one.
Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this one, Stephen. This one is The Age of Worms revealed. So this was the first.
I know. I love that. I love that.
First
But the point is, I looked forward to getting that Dungeon magazine every month. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get it. I love that magazine.
I cannot. Again, this is
Dragon. I grew up with Dragon. To me, Dragon. I have in my attic Dragon magazine like 10 and up and forever up to the end.
I don't have it that early, but I remember I was like 11. So it was like early 90s.
Yeah. And
I remember getting my Dragon magazine subscription, and I got it, and then like the next year I bought it with my newspaper route money, and like it. I cannot kid you when I say that. I know that this is me showing our age, especially as like a youth. I don't even necessarily mean like a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old, but even like when you're 20, like getting a magazine back then in the mail. And I looked forward to my Dragon and Dungeon magazine more than I looked forward to any sort of new book.
Oh God, yeah. I couldn't wait. I loved when it came in mail. I was so excited, and I would sit there and just pour over it. It was so exciting. And you look forward to, and by the way, Year of Monsters, Year of Legends comes out monthly, trying to do that same thing.
That's cool.
Try to give it that excitement. You got something new. Sounds hokey. You're like, you're just trying something. No, I'm dead serious. Like, we really try to make it so you got something fun to look forward to every month. And then you could talk about it and try it out, and you do. And people love it. It's really working great. But the point is, it's not that 4E, it's just what 4E represents. And 4E represented a big downturn in Dungeons and Dragons, in the place Dungeons and Dragons was in the zeitgeist, in gaming conventions. It was D&D was dead, and it was dying. And Pathfinder came around and fixed it, or at least took over, which was good. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. But the point is like, I just remember it was very depressing. It was a very depressing time to be a D&D fan.
You're not
for me.
No, you are not wrong at all. I do want to get caught up here real quick. We missed this. Okay. We were talking about Corel tipped $25. I think we missed this. Who also said that they were looking forward to seeing some more 4E content. And Corel and Matt, thank you both for your generous tips to support Team Derik. But of course, as you know, Corel, if you missed it Tuesday, maybe you didn't. We achieved our tip goal for doing another 4E stream. So, sometime before the end of the year, maybe even next month, before things get crazy for the holidays, we're definitely going to do another 4E stream. We're going to be talking about the monsters and monster roles and monster design in the world of 4th edition D&D, and what it got right and what it got wrong and what they fixed. And, maybe it was too little too late, but now we can benefit from hindsight, and we can kind of get the best of both worlds. We also had a super chat supporting Team Stephen, who said that role-playing, quote unquote, is Derik's trigger word, because I got triggered when you said that. And it is my trigger word, because I think that excuse that 4th edition, you can't role play in it, is a bogus one. We also had a tip from Badoom, who tipped $3. Badoom said, I know this is very specific, but how do you guys feel about Avatar Legends combat exchange system? I really like the structure of it, but many of the techniques and statuses seem disruptively strong. It was a weird problem for a PBTA game to have. And we'll get back to that really quick, Badoom. Love Fist sent in a Keep It Up super chat sticker. So thank you for that, Love Fist. I always like it when people do the stickers, because it's cute and it bounces around in the chat. So yeah, again, I think we can table the 4E one, but since we had this nice little tip come in, let's talk real quick. Now, Stephen, you played one game of Avatar Legends with me. We played it at Origins. So for those of you who don't know, in Powered by the Apocalypse, usually you just kind of make checks. Basically, everything's a skill check, more or less. But Avatar Legends created a combat exchange system. This is going to get kind of specific. I don't necessarily know that we need to talk about it, but I will give you this because you did do the TIFF. Oh, we've got ourselves a new member.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes. Super Princess, welcome to Adventurer. Welcome to the adventure. Thank you for joining the Knights of Last Call.
Super Princess.
Yes. Oh, Super Princess. But thank you. Welcome to the Adventurer rank. Thank you so much for your support. I love that you've chosen to become a sponsor of the Knights of Last Call YouTube channel. Appreciate it, and thanks a lot. That is very awesome. Enjoy your emojis and cool loyalty badge. So to answer Badoom's question really quickly, I'm just going to say this. I have played a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse. I've run a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games. And of course, in Powered by the Apocalypse games, the GM doesn't roll dice. The players roll everything. And when the players roll low, or even if the players roll kind of middle, there's always another consequence, right? We call this success with a cost. But even if the player misses, there's no miss in Dungeon World, right? If the player rolls low on their swing to hack and slash, something else happens. Maybe the monster does something, or maybe something bad happens. Long story short, when people get into a combat type scenario, like when we think about D&D combat scenario, everybody kind of wants to take a turn. Everybody wants to get a chance to swing their sword or cast their spell or, do some cool flip. When you're playing Powered by the Apocalypse has this problem where if you roll the dice too much, it can spiral the game out of control. The number one mistake I see when people play Powered by the Apocalypse games is they roll the dice too many times, because what that ends up generating is a lot of 6 minuses and 7 8s and 9s. And that requires you to make a lot of different consequences and a lot of different failure conditions. That can lead your game into this spiral out of control. Avatar Legends, the people who made it, realized something very important that even the Dungeon World creators didn't do, which is if you're playing Avatar, you're going to want to get into fights and use your cool bending powers. Like, that's just going to happen. Like, that's part of the genre. That's part of the show. That's part of the idea. So what they decided to do instead is create a system that still allowed you to use PBTA moves, but didn't create the spiraling problem. If you look at Avatar Legends and the Combat Exchange system, and you look at the stance move, number one, everybody rolls it simultaneously. This means it's a huge time saver at the table. Number two, there is no 6 minus condition that requires the GM to create a twist. The 6 minus condition means you can only use a basic strike, but you still get to do it, and it doesn't involve dice rolls. What this does, it allows you to have meaningful combat in Avatar Legends without creating this spiral out of control. Because I played a lot of Dungeon World where you get into a fight and you go around the table once and you've had 5 people roll variations of hack and slash, and you've had 5 people roll 7 8s and 9s or 6 or minuses, and suddenly the entire thing has just exploded and it's being gone out of your control. And it's also difficult as a GM to keep coming up with novel ideas for how you make this interesting. So I think they solved that issue. I actually think it's really smart. And I think a lot of people who don't like it aren't thinking about it deeply enough and haven't given it enough credit. All right. That was my aside on that. What else do we got here? Hot fire. Stephen, do you think that Pathfinder / Paizo are having an identity crisis?
What do you mean?
I don't know. That's not my question. It's somebody else's question.
I don't know if I want to answer
this. Are you taking your pass?
Well, I don't want to get in trouble, but
no, I mean, I guess, I would say this. Crisis, maybe not. It could be a good thing. But I definitely think that with the departure from the OGL, the introduction to the Orc, and the fact that Paizo is now sort of free to go on their own destiny or road, it's got to definitely be very scary / freeing to be able to say, we can kind of do whatever we want now. Like, we're not bound to these shackles that we've been bound to for the last, 15 years of being a gaming company. So I could see this going in a really good direction, but I could also see it potentially, leading somewhere bad.
I'll answer the question carefully. Is that Paizo was created by Lisa Stevens and Vic, who was Lisa Stevens, employee number 1 at Wizards of the Coast, and she did it for the love of the company. She did it because she loved role-playing games, and she did it because she wanted to just do it. She did it for no other reason. Yes, she made money, but that wasn't the reason. The reason is because she loved gaming and she wanted to do it. Well, they're not with the company anymore. The people who originally started this are gone and retired, and now it's gone into a new phase. And now they actually have to make real money and they actually have to be an actual company. And then you have, on top of that, you know, you have new upper management, you have a new C-suite, you have the OGL, which forced them to do a remaster of their entire core game, which is that was a pretty big thing that they didn't expect they had to do. They had COVID, and in fact, everyone went from having to live in Seattle and work in the offices to they're all remote very quickly. I think they're even getting rid of their offices. They changed their location of their warehouse. Like, there's been a lot in the last 2 to 3 years. They got a union. They lost their owners. They had to go through COVID. They have to remaster their core game. They're making Starfinder Second Edition. Everyone's working remotely now. I mean, there's a lot. That's a lot
of change
in one company. That's a lot of change in a very small amount of time, and almost none of it was planned for. None of it. So I don't think they're having an identity crisis. I think the world is having this crisis, and you're just seeing some companies are handling it either, I wouldn't say better than others, they're just doing it more quietly than others. So you don't see it as much. And Paizo, it's a lot more, it's a smaller company. They're very public. You know who works there. Like, you know, it's like, do you know who works at Tesla other than Elon Musk? You know anyone else? Can you name second employee? No. It's like no one knows it. You know, it's like, can you name any employees at Apple except for like 1 or 2? No. Right. You know, it's like, you know, whatever, 100,000 people work at that company. You probably couldn't name anyone else there except for 2 or 3 people. But people at Paizo, you probably name half of the people there. So it's a very different type of company. It's almost like a family. So you're just more aware of what's happening. And trust me, that's happening in every company right now. It's just the one in Paizo is a little bit more, noticeable. I don't think they have identity crisis. I think Pathfinder had to change, and it will stabilize. And in the long run, this is a good thing. And keep in mind is that, I mean, I was talking to Paizo during the OGL thing, and you know, they were scared, man. Like everyone was. They were, you know, I mean, I don't think they were scared as much as most because they had very strong lawyers, and their lawyer literally is the guy who wrote the OGL, so they knew what they were doing. But now they realized, wow, like we are still tethered to Hasbro and D&D even a little bit, and we have to we can't fool around. Like, this is done. We have to break away. Like, doing the remaster was not a small decision. I mean, that's a multi-million-dollar decision. That was a huge thing that destroyed timelines and releases and everything. I mean, think about like what they had to do to get that done. It's mind-boggling. Right.
Comes out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, comes out in like 3 weeks. 2 weeks.
Yeah. Supposedly somebody said they already had a copy of it on Reddit, but
well, we'll see. Maybe
it's not me.
Maybe some previews coming up very soon.
Yeah, maybe it could be. So that's but that's a great question. Kind of a more lighthearted question, but one that we have very powerful thoughts about. How cute is too cute in terms of player options? So I'll say what I'm going to say, which is this. And by the way, of course, we're talking about leshies and little poppets and arguably maybe certain parrot people. My problem with it is this. This is my main problem with it. D&D is a game, and it could just be a stylistic thing, but you're going to make your cute character. Now, if you were playing a game called Friendship is Magic, and your character was a animated Daisy, and they went around and they solved problems by talking to people and making people rainbow cookies and hashing out their problems and talking about their feelings, then I think you being an animated Daisy seems appropriate, correct, true, and I can imagine that being a kid's TV show. The problem with the cutesiness is a lot of people make these quote-unquote cutesy characters, and then they proceed to be a character that, dual wields death flails, and I kill I rip his head off, and I push him into the wood chipper, and I watch his body explode, and I drink his blood, right? It's this weird, irreverent, it's cute, but also, I'm so edgy, and I'm so, we're still playing D&D, and we're still killing monsters. I just don't understand the appeal of that, other than the sort of I don't know. I don't want to say anti-establishment of it, but like the sort of like, look at me, I'm being so, subverting your expectations. And that makes me so cool. I'm like Rian Johnson directing The Last Jedi. Look at me subverting your expectations. I'm so clever and so cute. It's like, I don't think you are. I think there's nothing wrong with those races or ancestries in the right structure. But the idea of your 1 foot tall poppet wielding a great flail and, ripping off the head of a dragon, I just don't buy it.
Well, wait until you read Intelligent Weapons. Because if you think that's weird, wait until you're playing an actual sword.
At least it's a sword, so I can buy that this oh, yes, I crave the flesh of other beings. It's like, okay, this fits with the game that we're playing. You know what I mean? I mean, read the abilities. I'm not even talking about RPGs as a whole. Read the names of the feats and the powers and the spells from
you're talking to someone who likes those.
Pathfinder Second Edition. From Pathfinder Second Edition.
I like those names.
They're like if you're a 2-weapon wielder, good chances you probably pick up the flensing strike feat. Flensing. You know what flensing means? It means to rip their skin off. Okay? Like in strips. Okay? So because by the way, the idea is you have to hit
strips.
The idea, by the way, is that you hit with both of your sword attacks using a dual slice or double slice, and then with your third action, you're basically ripping your swords out and taking their skin with them. Okay, I just don't buy that your cutesy little cactus leshy is the one doing it. I don't think you believe it either. Like not you Stephen, but like the wider group of people. So That's where
but here's the thing.
Okay, Ewoks are awesome. Ewoks were cannibals.
Ewoks were weird. It's actually not the Ewok problem. Here's the problem. Here's the thing: is that fantasy, all genres go through periods where you'll have a good example. Here's one it's a little different, but follow with me. Remember when there were no zombie TV shows and no zombie movies, and now suddenly there was nothing but zombies? It's like everything was zombie to the point that we got sick of it. Well, you know what? Everything was grimdark. Like when we started playing D&D, it was serious. It was Conan the Barbarian. Right. It was high fantasy. And even the schlock, even the crappy Roger Corman movies, they were not hokey. Okay, Beastmaster, that was the closest you got to hokey, and that thing had some pretty sick stuff in there. They had those bird people who ate people and dissolved them. Oh my god! And then they threw out their boats. I was like, damn, where's this? But that movie, by the way, that explains a lot of the way I am today. Because that is such a good juxtaposition of cute and fancy and horrible.
I don't know that I would call it cute. I mean, Kodo and Podo.
Oh, Kodo and Podo, and there was some cute stuff.
Look, I'm not saying that. By the way, to your point about the grimdarkness, by the way,
Slayer too. Yeah.
Jonka, by the way, wants Stephen to say coffee like a true New Yorker.
Coffee.
There's
a true coffee. I don't drink coffee. I say coffee. But the true New Yorkers say coffee like that.
Like the thing about D&D is, and this is the other thing is, the truth of the matter is D&D has always had elements in it that were kind of weird and bizarre and twisted. Qual's feather token, right? Rope trick. Like these are not let me put it this way. There was never, if you looked at a D&D, typical D&D session, it would not be very appropriate for Lord of the Rings, right? They weren't running away, and then Aragorn, throws out a Qual's feather token anchor and drops a big boat anchor on the group of goblins that are chasing them. Gandalf doesn't turn the corner and then take a rope out of his pouch, throw it up into the air, and then everybody climbs up into a pocket dimension to hide from the, Shelob, right? Like D&D has always had this kind of zaniness. So I actually don't mind that D&D has these kind of weird, kind of outside the box kind of cringy little things, which is fine. I'm specifically saying that when I think it comes to the ancestries, I think that it's a bridge too far. It's just a bridge too far.
But I don't think it is. Well, okay, so
obviously you don't.
What I was saying is that, I don't. But the point is that it went from grimdark, and this was okay. First of all, I worked I worked with Harry Potter, I worked with Nickelodeon, I worked with Little Bill, I worked with a lot of children's TV shows. I worked a lot with Nickelodeon, a lot. And I learned a lot working with them. And I realized that if you really want to be the big player in this space, you want to go after the kids. It's true. It's true because, and more importantly, is that D&D was started out as like an adults game, which ironically, I mean, a real adults game that kids loved, right? And think about it. It's kind of a funny thing if you think about it. It's like, think about the complexity of first edition. It was mind-bogglingly hard.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Hard for even grown adults to understand, let alone 12-year-olds. And now it's kind of come full circle where the game, I think it's too simple, like way too simple, at least D&D 5th edition. And, you know, and they made it too kiddie. And one of the things that we saw when we did Eldamon, and this was not an accident, is that there's a lot of people who like Pokemon and like these pet classes, and it doesn't exist in the game in any way, shape, or form. And it's both family friendly, and I get a lot, and I mean a lot of people who write me that they want to play this with their kids, and they want to use this as a gateway to get their kids into TTRPGs.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think whether it's, you know, Battle Zoo or it's Eldamon or even just like, you know, elements of Jewel of the Indigo Isle, like I think you definitely are filling into that family friendly.
Oh yeah, and that's on purpose because
I know. I think too, I think it's smart. I think it's good.
That's the thing, is that it's easy to make kiddie stuff grimdark and to go down that path, but it's not easy or really possible. And people think about how much people hate Conan the Barbarian, R-rated movie. Conan the Destroyer, PG-13. You ruin Conan, you can make it PG-13. That happens a lot. Yeah. Okay, a lot. And I feel that way.
I like both Barbarian and Destroyer, but Barbarian is clearly...
Well, Destroyer's not bad, and the book is the best Conan book I ever read. If you want to read the Conan Destroyer book by George R. R. Martin, unbelievably good, which I see why they made it a movie, because the book was incredible.
It's by Robert Jordan.
I mean, Robert Jordan. Sorry. It's not Robert. You're right. Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan wrote 7 Conan books.
I know.
All very good.
That
one was his best one.
I own them all. I own every single Tor Fantasy trade paperback of Conan the Barbarian.
You and I should talk, because I have a lot of them. I don't want everyone, but that was the rule when I wanted to go see Conan the Barbarian in the theater with my dad. And I brought my best friend at the time, David Cho. He's like, you have to read Conan before I bring you, because, you know, here I'm this little kid bringing this like R-rated movie when I'm 12, and I did.
You want to hear the hottest take of all time?
Yeah.
You know who my least favorite Conan the Barbarian, or Conan the Cimmerian, I suppose would be the appropriate way to say it, author is?
Who?
Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, I believe it, because it was kind of old and it was a little stodgy.
It got too much, I think, into like the era of what it came from, which was the 1920s, which was sort of the H.P. Lovecraft and, you know, stuff like that. And that was not my... I hate
the writing. I 100% agree with you. I do not like that writing of that era. Right. I don't even like the H.P. Lovecraft. Like,
I don't like.
Very hard to read. It's very stodgy. It's very.
I don't like H.P. Lovecraft either. I know.
No, I don't like H.P. Lovecraft at all. Right. I like his concepts and ideas, and I feel
like
writing.
I think it's cool, obtuse. But I just can't get into it, and I know I never did.
Very obtuse.
And so you know, I kind of bounced off of it. But I remember after growing up, I saw those movies, Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, and I remember I went to the books. I went to Half Price Bookstore, and they had them. And I bought them for $2.50 or something each, you know. And I remember reading it and just devouring it. And this, I think, might have been before. I might have already read like book 1 of Wheel of Time, but like I knew who Robert Jordan was. And anyways, great.
Anyhow, my point is that you can it's very hard to take grimdark R-rated material and bring it down, but it's very easy to take kids stuff and bring it up. Right. And that's what we're doing. And so it's not that I, quote, like the cute stuff, but I am trying to appeal to a much larger audience. And again, I think about, you know, this is my part of the business, is like, this is what I have to think about. It's like, and hopefully that's one of the reasons we're being somewhat successful, is that, oh, I'm just going to put out a book. I'm just going to put out something. It's like, well, who's your market? Who's going to buy it? What's the audience for the, there's a lot you got to think about. And that's what I think about constantly. It's like even just what we're creating, what type of ancestors we're creating, what type of adventures we're creating, now I'm getting more serious with it as we're getting bigger. It's like, I have to be very careful with that.
Yeah.
But yet still be agile enough that, like, for example, we knew that no one would put out an entire book for one class of dragons. Like, no one would do it. We do. Paizo wouldn't do it. It's too niche for them, but it's not too niche for us.
Sure.
So anyhow, is it too cute? Dude, you're talking to the guy whose favorite RPG of all time is Toon, so probably not.
Probably not. So there you go. We definitely disagree with that. Save Versus, by the way, with a $5 super chat, throwing their support to Stephen, because they say the only time cute bothers me is if we're playing and it's a detriment, like we're playing Tolkien and they're trying to play chibi anime.
Oh well, but then that's bad players. Like, you all have to have the covenant of the talk of everyone has to be on the same page when you're playing a game together. You can't have, I'm gonna, like, three guys are playing, the grim dark, I'm playing Elric, I'm playing Conan. It's like, I'm playing Throat Slitter. It's like, I'm playing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's like, really? Like, I don't think that fits, or maybe it does. I don't know, but you got to make sure everyone's on the same page there. So Watership Down is messed up, man.
I got
that cartoon was on like all the time when I was a kid, and that thing messed me up.
We got some questions here, but I'm gonna kind of pass on them, just because they're not really good debate questions. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. Discussion topic. Here we go. Pros and cons of adventure paths. What are the merits and flaws of adventure paths or Paizo's adventure paths? What, if anything, did RFC do differently in producing Jewel of the Indigo Isle?
Oh my god! Do you have an hour? I mean, it's like I did so much different. That's just a question. Oh my god!
Well, for starters, let's start off with the fact that you like adventure paths. I don't.
I love them.
Right. And I guess the question for me is, now you've told me a lot about your group. So this starts to make more sense to me, because it sounds like your group, by and large, kind of want a breadcrumb, spoon-fed experience.
Yes, they do. I told you, we did Kingmaker and we hated it.
Right.
Hated it.
Like I always say this. There are, let's say you want to have thrills, right? There's two types of people. There are people who will go out and they will rent an ATV and they'll go to like one of those, 100 acres of wilderness, and there's trails and there's like swamps and, go mudding, and you're on an ATV and you're just freewheeling wherever you want to go. But, it's kind of dangerous. It's kind of muddy. It's kind of dirty. But then there are also people who go, I love thrills. I just get on a roller coaster. Right. And I know what I'm going to get, and it's going to be consistent. And it's going to be designed to be thrilling.
That's us.
And
That's us.
It's no muss, no fuss. I don't have to get dirty. I don't have to attend a safety lecture to even get into the thing. So the question is, do you like ATVing or do you like roller coasters? And obviously roller coasters are very popular.
Yes.
So I can understand it.
Well, here's the thing. There's no wrong answer because I've tried all of them. I've tried every type of adventure there is. And my group, and we have decided, and we talk about this because we used to joke when we were kids, like, we're going to be old men playing this in the home, and when we're tired, and we're like, oh my god, it's coming closer than we think. we're getting there. We're like, oh my god, this is actually happening. And we say it's so funny. I told you, like, when we were in our 20s and 30s, we used to get into fist fights, man. I didn't talk to my best friend for years because of freaking Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, and now we're like, it's fine, whatever. Like, and none of this never happens. We're old men. And the thing is like, we know what we like and we just accept it. And this is what we like. We like what we like. And I told you, this is the same people. I'm like, oh, let's try Star Trek Adventures. No, we like what we like. And so we play what we like. And I'm just lucky enough that I found a group of people that we all like the same thing. And in this case, it's Adventure Pass, and we love them.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean,
it is what it is.
It is. And again, I think there's a lot of people out there who would agree with you. You know, a lot of people said, Derek, I don't understand. You know, you say you don't really like Adventure Pass, but if you look at your channel, you ran Rise of the Rune Lords, then Quest for the Frozen Flame. And why is that? Well, because the other answer. Time. Right? When somebody else went, right? Stephen and Mark already went through all of the trouble of putting all of that information together for you. Now,
I did this year too.
You know, and in fact, and in fact, like we're playing Abomination Vaults right now. And one of the reasons I get frustrated, if I get frustrated with it, is sometimes not because it's necessarily an adventure path, but because I'm frustrated that I'm like, this is not structured in a way that is conducive to me to run it, right? Like when I'm in the middle of a combat encounter, that is not the time where I want to be trying to find the creature's tactics or its stat line and getting confused because there's 5 paragraphs about how this character, how she hated her mother. And that is why she left and went to this place and fell in with this group of people. And then she had a torrid love affair. And it's like, for me, that's great. Cool. That's awesome. But it's unusable. So there's like 2 elements for me when we talk about APs. One is structurally, I do like games that, can go off the rails, so to speak. But I appreciate that there are people who like roller coasters, and I appreciate that they're easy and fun. What my main problem, I think, with Adventure Pass these days is it could be it's an information overload. Somebody mentioned A1, right? Or like A1, A2, A3, which is against the slavers. You could arguably say G1, G2, G3, Drow 1, Drow 2, right? That was kind of an adventure path, right, against the giants. But the thing about that is G1, right, was like 10 pages long. Like the module was 10 pages long or something ridiculously short. So I do think that, for me, it's almost like sometimes I worry, like there's so much stuff here, that it's tough for me to even manage it all. So,
well, I do want to answer the second part because we did a lot different. And that's why I think this is the best adventure path I've ever written. Period.
And you will never do another one again, right?
I will never do another one again. But seriously, there's a whole bunch of things. First of all, we put in this one thing called what happens if the characters lose? Now, remember, I run nothing but adventure paths. So right. I thought of everything that is a problem when I run them. And I also had the 2 of the authors, Ron Lundeen and Patrick Rennie, who were in charge of the adventure path line, wrote my adventures for me. So I had the cream. I had everyone. I had the cream of the crop. I had the guys who literally do this for a living working with me. So we were able to figure out what are the issues and let's fix them. And to the point that they took a lot of these implements back in the Paizo. The new Paizo adventures actually have a lot of what we came up with in them. So if we have a whole thing in here, because adventure paths do have to be on rails, or I like to call them a roller coaster. It's right in the freaking name. It's adventure path. It is a path. You're going on the path. What happens if you get off the path? Well, I have rules here of how to get you back on the path. We have what happens if they lose, and then we have ways to get you back onto the game. We have a lot of that. So that way you feel as a GM that you don't have to railroad people. See, that's the difference. It's like railroading means, they have to stay on the path. Therefore, I need to railroad them back onto the path. No, with this, it allows you, you can go off the path. I'm not railroading you. And here's directions on how to get them back onto the path. So that's something that helps the game become more organic. The other thing is the adventure itself is interconnected, which everyone told me not to do. And I found out why the hard way. Never do it. It's incredibly, incredibly hard because anything you do in the first adventure, then you do the second adventure, you're like, oh crap, I gotta go rewrite the first adventure. And then when I got to the third adventure, I was like, crap, I gotta rewrite the first adventure and the second adventure to make it all tied together. It was a total nightmare. Never ever do it. But all the adventure paths by everyone else is siloed and they're standalone on purpose. Ours is not. It's one massive adventure, right. which also can be played separately, by the way, too.
Yeah, but I think that's also sort of something that I appreciate. And again, I'm not knocking anybody in particular, but sometimes when you play through an adventure path and you realize that each of these chapters was kind of written by a different person at a different time, at a different place, with maybe minimal editorial oversight. And it shows. It could be a very big tonal shift. It could be a big difference. And like, we're experiencing that going through Abomination Vaults, right? Book 1 of Abomination Vaults, the first couple levels, were written by author A, and book 2 is written by author B, and book 3 was written by author C. So it's like each part of the dungeon suddenly feels very different in a way. And especially for me and my players who are pretty tuned into this stuff, it's very noticeable. And so I think sometimes you're right, is that the way to look at Adventure Path it is really just one big adventure. And
it should be.
It should be.
They're not designed that way, though.
I know, but probably because of sales purposes or whatever. But
because of editorial, because they have to get out the first adventure when the 5th and 6th are still coming in.
Right.
So
it's whereas you did not do that, right? Jewel of Indigo Isles.
We had it all, and then I rewrote the whole freaking thing because I'd have it all tied together. And then lastly, the biggest thing we changed is I am very big into movies and TV and script writing techniques. And I don't know why anyone does this, and I even talked to Paizo about this, and they were like, I mean, I gave him a 30,000, put it this way, most outlines are 3,000 to 5,000 words. Mine, I think, was 35. I think it was 35,000 word outline of the adventure, which is like the size of a venture, by the way. So like that was just my outline, and the actual adventure is 250,000 words, which is the size of a 1 through 6. But ours is really it's first level to 11, but it's the size of a 1 to 20 adventure. But it's not bigger, and it's not extra experience. It's just that we give a lot of information so that you as the GM can flesh out this world and really go into detail. And really, if they want to sit there and really explore an area, they can. If they just want to go in and go out, they can. And we got it all there for you. But I used a lot of script writing techniques to make this a very cool adventure so that you don't have that problem that you've talked about many times where you feel like, why is this, like, I was poking holes in everything. I must have poked 1,000 holes into these freaking adventures. Like, why is the bad guy not coming in the beginning and killing the adventurers,
right?
Like level 1? Why did they do that? Why is that not possible? And we thought or tried to think of everything, like the reason, and we even say why.
I mean,
this is happening because of this.
I mean, spoiler alert! This was my big problem with Quest for the Frozen Flame, and if you,
I know it was,
I was like, why would this high level?
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, why wouldn't this high level boss character just throw fireballs on the party till they're dead? Like, there's no reason. They absolutely should do that. They're there. They're literally there.
We go through this, and if I can poke a hole in it, I did.
Okay,
and I made sure that I was as brutal to this, my own adventure, as I could be. And it's like, but still, believe it or not, I couldn't think of everything because there are a couple of threads on our Discord. They're like, why did this happen? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? And Marcus, luckily, he comes in because he does the adventure as well as I do. He's like, oh, well, first of all, we can't give you everything. Okay, we gave you 98%.
The GM still got to do something.
You got to do some stuff. We gave you way more than most. And also, does everything need to be explained? Seriously, does everything need to be explained? We gave you all the main points. I tried to give you the A story, the B, and the C story.
Right.
You're talking about the D and C E story here. I'm like,
right.
You guys can figure that stuff out. I gave you enough. All
right.
It's already too big.
So we got probably time for 2 more questions. If you do want to throw any last minute,
we're going to midnight.
I got 3 hours of sleep last night. We are not going to midnight.
Why? Why'd you get 3 hours?
I just could not get to sleep. I'm too excited. I've got a level. It's so funny. I was here, Mark and Jess were talking about monster design the other day on your stream. And we, in our Northern Reaches mega game, which is coming to a close, season 2. But remember, every year we start a new season. Everybody starts off at level 1 again, and we restart. Well, we have characters who got to 20th level already, and basically we allow them to like keep gaining levels beyond 20. So like we have characters who have like, they're almost like dual or triple class characters because they've got so many ability powers. And we have a big raid this weekend against a dragon. She will have something in the neighborhood of like 5,000 to 10,000 hit points. And like, And like her AoE does like 500 to 600 damage. It's just really funny, like in the context of designing a monster. And I'm like, yeah, my needs for a monster are a little bit more tough. But speaking of that, because the inspiration for some of our big Northern Reaches games, which we call raids, where we bring in like 12 PCs, is MMOs, as video games. And somebody asked a question which said, are TTRPGs stuck in the past and not taking enough from other media like video games? What ideas and mechanics should TTRPGs steal from video games and other media? It's a great question.
1,000%, because
what should they take? I mean,
in fact, if you read Jewel the Indigo Isle, you can actually see I took a lot from video games, a lot from World of Warcraft, a lot from raid bosses. I mean, I talk about this as a bit of a spoiler, but like, is that okay? One of the big things is that, and this is why you like 4E, is that there are different types of fights and different types of bosses, and everyone who plays video games knows this. There are like the mooks, then there's the the mobs that you fight, which are just nobodies. Then you have like the arc boss, or the
lieutenant.
The lieutenant, right?
Sub boss,
and those, right? And then you have the boss, and then you have the boss, like the real boss,
right.
And when you did raids, you had to understand the patterns, and there would be phases of the fights.
Yep.
Well, guess what we do? I did exactly that. I actually have different types of fights, different types of bosses and lieutenants, and we have fights that have phases and actually are large, complex fights that you can't take them down in 1 or 2 hits, even if you wanted to try. And maybe if you were insanely lucky, you could. But I have one boss. It's a bit of a spoiler, but they can walk through walls and ceilings like they were paper. And you're like, hey, I'm just going to run away from this thing. And you run away, and they walk through the wall. And you're like, oh my God, we are dead. There is no getting away from it. And that's part of it's a phased encounter.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I mean, but I will say that you hit on the one thing, which is what I think TTRPGs should learn from video games, or should take from video games. And yes. And again, I understand that TTRPGs have this legacy. And to be fair, there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to about the illusion of simulationism, right? D&D fundamentally grew out of people playing miniature war games, and they were trying to simulate as much as they could the reality of a medieval battle. And that got converted into D&D. So I understand that there's this nature, this strong desire for people somehow, even if here's the thing, even if they don't actually like it, their initial reaction is to be like, I need that. But then when you really push them, you'll realize that they don't actually care about that. They just have this knee-jerk reaction. What am I talking about? Death. I think the biggest problem that tabletop role-playing games suffer from is death, is losing. In video games, in MMOs, like we've been playing for 40 years, 30 years video games. You play an MMO, your people die, you reappear at the spirit healer, you right click on it, you have to run back, and maybe you lose a little bit of gold or whatever to get your equipment fixed, and then you can go fight the monster again. Or if you're playing a video game, you reload your saving throw from your saving spot, right? Oh, we know it's about to be the big boss, save, okay, we go and fight it, oh, it kicked our ass, we're dead, whatever. The game, it's not trying to figure out, well, what happens when you die? The game just goes reset. TTRPGs, I think, suffer because the game designers know they can't actually really kill you. They can't kill you that much. And so they make these game systems that are, a lot of times, I think, very, very much designed around creating the illusion that your character is in trouble. And they can't really push you that much, because they know if they push you too much, along with the variability of a D20, that you're going to have people dying left and right. And the game and the story, most important to this, the game and the story don't really handle it that well. And I think that a lot of people, and that's why a lot of DMs, I think, fudge, is because they go, man, if a bunch of people die here, my game might be over. And I don't want my game to be over. People are having fun. So I am going to pull punches. I'm going to fudge. I'm going to do stuff, right? And I think that is a problem that exists. And video games, again, solved this a long time ago. And nobody ever goes, oh, I fucking hate Skyrim, you know, or I hate Baldur's Gate 3. It was so dumb. Like, my characters came in and we fought this monster, this dragon, and we died. And then it's like, oh, I reloaded. Like, what does that even mean? It's like the story was just ruined for me because my character died and I got reloaded. It's like, no, my character's dead. The game should be over, deleted. Maybe I restart. Maybe I don't. Maybe I have to make an entirely new character with an entirely new set of character choices. It's like, nobody says that when you're playing Baldur's Gate 3. Nobody said that. Nobody said that when you're playing Skyrim. So the game is not built. And by the way, death used to be a big part of the game. Characters also used to fit on an index card. Okay. You had 6 stats, an attack roll, an armor class, and hit points. That was it. It's the only thing on your character sheet. You're playing high level Pathfinder 2. I don't need to tell you that those characters are crazy complicated. Even a level 1 Pathfinder 2 character or a level 1 4th edition character is a fairly complex beast with a lot of moving parts and a lot of things invested into it. And now you've got people, you know, the most nervous I ever am as a GM, Stephen, is when I'm sitting down to play a game and somebody shows up and they go, yeah, I just got this $50 mini made from Hero Forge and I just bought this brand new set of dice that's custom color matched to my character's outfit. And I'm like, I hope you don't fucking die. Because that'd be a tragedy. And I roll all my dice out in front. So I don't know what to tell you. But like, it's terrifying to me. And so, you know, again, I get that that was always part of the culture of the game, but I think that we've moved past that. I mean, for most, you know, especially for your, you know, mainstream game. Like if it was up to me, Pathfinder 3, no death.
I mean, that's a big problem too, because it's like the game has a lot of holdovers from the original wargaming. You know, I mean, it became from wargaming where people were dying all the time, and I see people in the chat are like, oh, death is a big part of it, blah, blah, blah. You know what? That is the number one question I used to have when I would talk to game masters and developers when I was, you know, younger and when I was still playing and not developing. It's like, how do you handle death? It was the number one question I asked at Gen Con and all these talks. And there was never a good answer.
Never. I asked the same question, or I was sitting in the same seminars and other people were asking that same question, and maybe it was you, and no one ever had a good answer, ever.
No, because death is like, well, not only does it end your game, but it can also end it can end you having a customer on top of it. So it's like, wow, this is really bad. It's like death is bad in so many ways. It's like, it's a bad experience. And how many times have you had stories? I have a lot of these, is that I have friends who are like, oh, I played D&D and the guy killed me in the first session. I never played again.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All the time.
Or I've had games or systems that basically died because a couple people died, and then there was kind of like, and the problem is,
and they don't want to continue.
Well, it's the American Idol problem. Okay. So the American Idol problem, somebody wrote this essay about this a long time ago, which is fine. When the American Idol first came out, like the first season, you had Kelly Clarkson was the winner. She was amazing. She was great. She went on to become this like, you know, Grammy winning artist because and then they did American Idol again and again and again. And then they got like Carrie Underwood. Great. But then by the time you get to American Idol 6 or 7 or 8, it's like, you've already had all the good people on your show. And so they've already left. It's like when you make a character in D&D, that's the character that you want to make, right? That's the character you're invested in. That's the character you wanted to play for the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so when that character dies 2 weeks into the game, you kind of go, yeah, I kind of don't want to play anymore. Or I'm just going to make the same exact character, you know, Bob 2, you know, Ragnar the Third. It's his brother, you know, it's his son. And it's like, you just literally make the same character and it feels weird and cheap and like, yeah, it's a problem, you know? I mean, there's a reason why Pathfinder 2, by the way, number one rule, I was going to do a video about this just to make like, cause we never do videos. So everybody thinks our channel's dead. You're doing clips now, which is really smart. I was going to say, if you want to know what the number one rule is to survive Pathfinder 2, stop spending your fucking hero points, okay? You're invincible. You are literally immune to death if you have a hero point, okay? So don't do it. Just keep your hero point. I know that you just failed the climb check, or that you just failed the pick lock check, or that you critically failed a healing check, and somebody's going to take D8 damage. Oh no, who cares? Keep your hero point. You are immortal. That would be like if I gave you something and I said, this is a gold coin. It's worth $1,000, but as long as you keep it, you're immortal and you can't die from, accidents or from disease or would you spend it on something? No, you'd keep that thing forever until you were about to die, and then you'd trade it in. Anyways, the only time you should spend a hero point in Pathfinder 2 is if you have more than one. And most.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest issue is that, video games. I mean, I could talk about this for hours, went from, they had to be video games that lasted 3 to 5 minutes in arcades because they were designed to eat up quarters, so people died left and right. And death was a much bigger part
Dragon
of
Slayer. Dragon Slayer.
My favorite game of all time.
Really?
I can get through Dragon's Lair. Oh, wait, hold on.
Let me just say, screw that game. Uh-oh.
I have my Dragon's Lair.
Oh, wow. Wow. You are really repping your Dirk the Daring there.
Oh, dude, I love Dirk the Daring. I love this game.
Wait, it actually works?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's incredible. It's a real game. It's a real arcade. Yeah, it works and everything. It's fantastic. And I could get through this game without dying easily, no problem. Okay. And people used to pay me. It was 50 cents. And people used to pay me 50 cents to play it and finish it.
Right. Because you had
Dragon's Lair, a fantasy adventure where you become a valiant knight on a quest to rescue the fair princess from the clutches of an evil dragon.
Man, that's.
Did you hear that?
Oh yeah. That's some pretty
daring adventurer finding his way through the castle of a dark wizard who has enchanted it with treacherous monsters and obstacles.
That's so cool. That's really cool. Oh man, that's awesome. By the way, before we went live, I was showing Stephen my concert T-shirt, which was Ring Bearer.
Yep.
The middle there and back again, the Middle Earth Tour 2941, and he was telling me that I was a gigantic nerd.
Well, guess what?
And
here's my Space Ace too, baby.
Okay, he wins. Okay, he wins.
I could do, and this one I could turn into what was it? Ace. I could turn into Ace every single time, including the hidden place you can do Ace. But I don't remember why we're talking about Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. This is my favorite game. I love these.
Well, games. We were talking about it because we were talking about
Space Ace.
We were talking about how video games were made to. They were originally made to for you to die a bunch, so they eat up a bunch of quarters.
Right, yeah.
And now it's like the idea that you might buy a video game and not finish it and not be able to beat it is actually problematic, right? Because if you don't beat the game,
it went from this is something that is designed to kill you and just take away your quarters, which is why people would pay me to play Space Ace and Dragon's Lair so they could see the freaking thing. Because if you didn't know what you were doing, it would eat up your money, and it was fun. I loved doing it. I still can get to the end. And now games are a relaxation where there's no, which is all, it is and it's not. It's like, yes, you get to the end, but then you have the Dark Souls thing where it's gone full circle. Well, people want it really hard and they're really into like the roguelikes, which were my favorites. And you have like the Dark Souls and Elden Ring, but you can still get to the end. As hard as they are, you can get to the end. And the problem is D&D is still stuck in the 70s where, you die. Mm-hmm. Unless you're playing Paranoia.
Right. Well, no. There are game systems. Somebody mentioned, Fabula Ultima. For example, in Fabula Ultima.
I haven't played that yet.
In Fabula Ultima, when your character goes to 0 hit points, you have 2 choices. You can surrender or you can sacrifice. If you surrender, your character is not dead, but the GM and you will work out some sort of, price that you have to pay, or that maybe the villain gets away, or they complete their plan, or they burn down the village. You're fine. You get to keep playing the game, but now you swear an oath of vengeance because, the villain destroyed the town. Or you could choose to sacrifice your character. And if you sacrifice your character, you basically get to go out like a hero. And your character will be lost permanently for all time, but it's the player's choice. Is this something in the story? Is this a moment in the game where I am comfortable losing my character? But at the same time, because when we did our Pathfinder 2 video a long time ago called Missing is Not Fun, people mistook it and they said, oh, you know, you don't want people to lose. Actually, just the opposite. I do want people to lose. I would love for a TTRPGs to have things like 70% win rates, right? You couldn't do that today because if people were dying or suffering casualties every 30, 3 out of 10 fights, the game would just fall apart. But I want the game to be really challenging. I want those victories to feel well earned.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to also have to like give up on your game and flush it down the toilet just because everybody died a bunch, and whether you want to admit it or not, that is the quickest way to end campaigns. And
by the way, someone says here's Stephen, live streaming game runs before was cool or online. Let me tell you, what they used to do is they would have the cabinet and then they would put a TV on the top of the cabinet.
Oh yeah.
So people can see it. Remember that?
I do remember that.
I would come in and I would play it and there would be it was cool. I literally would have fans and like watching. I swear to God, it's like streaming before there was streaming and people would sit there watching because no one can get to the end. Right. And I would come in, I would do it like every day, and people would always like, "Oh, you're the kid who could like get to the end. Can you do it for me?" And and
it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I think there's an element of that used to be present in Dungeons and Dragons. Like I think a lot of people viewed Dungeons and Dragons like it was Dragon Slayer, where it was like, "Oh, we've never gotten to the end of that. We die every time. No one is good enough at the game to get to the end of that module."
Oh, definitely. You would always die. Like, and the only way you would play those high level modules is you would have to make characters level 10, 11. You wouldn't have characters that made it that far. But characters that made it that far.
But when you met somebody who supposedly did,
didn't.
You were like, wow, look, this person has respect, they've got street cred,
Right.
So
I mean, if they did, it was okay, once in a while I did, but they did have street kid, but they were designed to like kill you. I mean, and that was just the way it was. But the problem is like no one has really figured out a great way to get rid of that because it's like you need tension, you need stakes for it to be fun, especially if you have fighting, because that's the conflict. You need conflict for excitement, and conflict in a TTRPG is usually fighting, which means you have to have stakes, which is usually death,
right?
Which usually it's like it's a chicken and egg. It's like, how do you get around that? It's very hard.
It is.
No one's really figured it out.
No one has figured it out. So I would say that, and here's the thing: there are solutions, but I also know that there's a lot of quote unquote mainstream gamers, your 5e players, your Pathfinder players, who when they hear about these sort of quasi-narrative death options like I was describing from Fabula Ultima, they bounce off of that really hard. And what they'll tell you is they go, no, I want death to be death, and I want it to matter. But they're doing this from a flawed perspective. They're doing it because they think that they're actually good at the game, and what they don't realize is that the game either isn't challenging and has a bunch of airbags and safety rails all designed to keep your character from ever dying. You're not actually in any danger, or often the case, your GM, they are fudging to shit. And anytime that your character would die and you're like, oh man, anytime I get this all the time at my game store, someone will go, oh my God, we had the craziest session. We almost died. And then I was down to 5 hit points, right? And then the dragon came down and it attacked me. Oh my God, he rolled a nat 1. Can you believe it? And then the GM was like, oh no, he rolls a nat 1 and he misses, and he was so overconfident, he overextends and he falls prone. And I was like, oh, I take my sword and I kill him. And it's like, I rolled like an 11, but the GM said that because he was prone, that really affected his armor class. And so then I killed him. And I was like, I listened to this with like a, kind of a smirk, because I go, dude, none of that, your GM was just making that up. Like none of that happened. Like you were dead. The GM did not miss you. You should never have gotten the counterattack, and so again,
By the way, someone says like I'm an insane nerd. I forgot one more thing. I actually have a full-size Dragon's Lair cabinet in my corner over there, by the way.
That is, so you were showing us the miniature one the whole time.
Yes, I have the miniature and a full-size.
But then the full-size one.
Yes. I love Dragon's Lair, man. I love it.
Yeah.
But I love Stranger Things. I love it. And when they showed Stranger, because I feel like this is my life in so many ways. I've talked about it a lot. Is the clothes the kids were wearing? It's the same clothes I had. The clothes that Nancy's wearing in one episode was actually the same shirt that my girlfriend at the time had. The wallpaper in I forgot whose room it was. I had the exact same wallpaper. Like I was like, oh my God, this is literally my life. And then when they showed the beginning of season 2 and he's sitting there in an arcade playing Dragon's Lair, I was like, oh my God.
I mean, you know, Stephen, you're one of the people who always talks about businesses being smart and market. Listen, Stranger Things was designed to get to tap into you, to get you.
Dude, what they got that music, they got the font, which is the same font on the Stephen King books. And I mean, dude, I can go on and on. Like the production design of that, it's not even chef's kiss. It is perfection. It is actually the only other movie / television show I've ever seen that gets to that level of production design perfection is Star Wars, the original, which is also was beyond perfect. It was perfect to levels that people still talk about today.
I'll throw in
the Matrix.
I'll throw in Lord of the Rings too.
And Lord of the Rings. You know what? I 100% agree. I listened to all 39 hours of commentary.
Yep. Yeah, because it was so good.
There was 4 of them. There's 4 in the extended versions, and one of them is with the costume designers and set designers, and that one's one of the most. That's the most interesting.
I mean, when you realize that they had entire teams of armorers and weaponsmiths just to make all the armor that they needed for the production, and like even Peter Jackson says, you know, they filmed those films over a year of filming because they filmed all 3 films. He goes, but pre-production began 5 or 6 years before even that.
You don't have to tell me. My brother's a costume designer for movies.
Right. He's working on movies now that probably won't be out for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. He has to work on it more than anyone because he has to work on it before the movie, during, and then after. Well, after he has to take it down and like send back the costumes and things like that. And he has to also do pickup shots and things like that. But he's got one of the hardest jobs there is. Like it's an incredibly tough job. And he's working literally from the beginning, pre-production to post, like all the way through.
Yeah, Sean, I distinctly remember that from the extended edition, from the cut, where they talk about how they're like, we have people on staff whose sole job is just to make chainmail. That's all they do is just make chainmail. So, all right, well, that is all the time we have for tonight.
No more questions?
Well, we didn't have any more questions in chat, no super chats, no tips. So it looks like Derek won.
Oh no, you won.
But listen, I have a bias here because it's obviously my channel. But again, I do think, you know, we've said this before, which is, you know, we're fairly critical of most things in the role-playing game space. But you know, time and time again, we really respect the work that Roll for Combat is putting out. It's part of the reason why I don't feel bad, you know, plugging their Kickstarter, their Year of Legends.
Feel bad?
Well, because like it's not like one of those situations where I'm like, oh, I don't actually believe in this. I just, you know, I'm just trying to do them a favor or something like that. No, I think they make great stuff, and we've always really, really liked the products that they've come out with, the Beast books, the Ancestry books, you know, and even now,
they said they missed your super channel.
I will fully believe that I'm a little bit like, oh man, I really do need to dig into that Jewel of Indigo Isle, because, you know, maybe it sounds like maybe you guys went above and beyond and tried to take
Oh my God, of course we did. When you read it, and it's like it goes into put it this way, it goes there.
We did have a super chat from our friends Vin, self-confessed cynic, who, by the way, we did for our patrons only, we did a live stream where we played Dread, the Jenga tower game, but we played it in Castle Ravenloft. We did this last Friday the 13th. It was a live stream while our friend Vin was in town from Australia. But we are going to be airing that probably next Monday, because Tuesday is Halloween. So we're probably going to premiere it on Monday, and you guys can get a chance to take a look at that. So Self-Confessed Cynic did say, similar question, should TTRPG systems integrate apps and VTTs? I think this is yes. I think the answer there is yes. You know, and I think that I am waiting. I honestly mean this. I am waiting for the first VTT RPG, the TTRPG that is not designed to be played at the table. It is only designed to be played through a virtual tabletop. I think that is coming. I think when it comes, it might be tremendously successful if it can get the kind of backing and support that it needs. There are a lot of elements about tabletop role-playing games that You know, like, I mean, a great example of this is like,
It-
I grew up playing
it's called
Magic.
Baldur's Gate 3, by
You know,
the way.
I grew up. No. I mean, like a real. I don't just mean just playing with, you know, dialogue trees and pre-generate thing. I mean, like a real RPG. Like, I'll give you a great example. Hearthstone.
Well, those are called MUDs.
Yeah, Hearthstone came out, and I didn't like it because I like Magic better. But Hearthstone had mechanics that you could never have in Magic the Gathering.
Oh, yeah.
Like Hearthstone had mechanics like, you know, you play some Chaos Warp and it turns one of your cards into any card from the set, just randomly. Any card
I love
in
those.
You know,
the RNG.
you know, or like, and so yeah, very RNG. Now, I didn't like the game for other reasons, but what I did like is, wow, I remember looking at things like that. There's one, this is like from the original Hearthstone. There was like a creature called like Archmage or something. And every time you cast any spell, it would put a fireball spell into your hand. If you cast 3 or 4 spells, it would put 3 or 4 fireballs in your hand. You could never do that in Magic the Gathering. And I remember reading these things and going, wow, this is cool. I don't know that I like the game, but I like that they're doing things that you could never do if this was a paper product.
Guess what?
Hearthstone can only be played digitally.
Guess what? You know, Magic Arena is now doing that.
Oh, Alchemy. Yes, the Alchemy format. Yep.
Yeah,
doing
they're putting out cards that can only be used on Magic Arena.
Yep, exactly. and you know, and they even have cards now where they like will basically hot fix the cards.
Oh, yeah.
And so because they can do that now, right? You couldn't once the cat's out of the bag, you know, that's the other problem with print products, Stephen, is once the cat's out of the bag, you can't do anything. If it's a
you don't have to tell me. I know.
If it's a digital product, you can always update it, send it out to all your backers, and that's it. You're done, you know. So Love Fist came in with $10.
I saw. I'm only like
with a
I'm $1.48 away from you now.
with a pity chat for Stephen.
Someone does $2, I'll beat Derek.
Love Fist says
$2.
That they love Roll for Combat.
$2. All you need is $2. $2, and I
now
can
Sean says that the people who make Foundry are literally making a game designed for the VTT. Well, I will be paying attention, Sean. I think I'd love to see how they were going to do that. Yeah. Again, and I know, like, you know, someone Hadrick says, is that not Neverwinter Nights? Is that not Baldur's Gate 3? No, because in my mind, those are still video games. I am talking about a true, you know, TTRPG, just one that is designed for the use of the VTT, and that you really could not do in a tabletop situation. And I know you might be thinking, like, what could that possibly be? Well, to be clear, there are certain elements sometimes when people watch Pathfinder 2 where I go, we're getting there close already. I mean, I see people at high level Pathfinder 2 and I go, thank God we're not playing this in paper, because what would this even look like? You know, it would take 5 minutes just to resolve your strike. You have so many different damage types. Oh, you got a brilliant weapon and a slow weapon, and I have to make a save and a save and a save. D Priest, right at the last minute, $2 super chat. Paul,
I got another one. Yeah. Oh, Better Off Dead. That's right.
I want my $2. Better Off Dead.
No, he goes $2.
Oh, $2.
That's what he says.
Dominicus Priest says spite chat for cute races. Hoyrit says,
oh, look at that. I even got someone who did their very first super chat ever.
Yes.
Just to spite you.
It says, let's do an Indigo Isles first look. Hoyrit, that is actually probably a pretty cool idea. Like,
actually, it's a very good idea, and I'd be happy to come on.
Yeah.
Because I literally designed the whole thing and laid it out and wrote a lot of it. So sure.
Yeah. Well, a flurry of activities as Kefka laughs, and the super chats now makes it so that Stephen is unfortunately our winner. And I'm not gonna hold out and try to milk it for the tip just so that I can win. But I will gladly concede, you know, that the guy with a, you know, successful and thriving game design business with an active Kickstarter and several successful ones under his belt is the winner. So I am.
You can do it too. By the way,
it's so intimidating.
It's horrible. But the VTT, there is something you can do. It's called animated tokens, which you could only get if you back Year of Legends, and you can't do that any other way.
Right.
There's no such thing as an animated token or animated mini. So, you know, I'm actually fully embracing the VTT world and trying to come out with, like, you know, I can only do so much when it comes to a book. Like, I try to give it on the best paper, and we do, like, you know, the ribbon bookmarks and stuff. Like, but you can only go so far. But in the world of online, I'll tell you, the number one question I get, we were talking about this before, everyone asks me, does it have Path Builder every time? And
Right.
the answer is yes.
Right.
Everything we do is Path Builder.
We've talked about this. If Knights of Last Call was to go out and make a book, let's say Knights of Last Call was to go out and make a variant of the player's hand of the core rule book, where we took our crack at the core classes, right? Like the remade fighter, the you had the remastered, now here have the remix, right? So Pathfinder remix. If I went out and did that and I said, oh, we're doing PDFs, and if we get to a certain stretch goal, we might even do print copies. For a lot of people, it would be useless, because if it's not in Foundry or Path Builder or Nexus, it might as well not even exist. So I think one of the smartest things that you all have done is understand that is how a lot of people play. That is how a lot of people engage with the game. Even if they have the option to play in person, they'd rather play online. You have people who are playing locally at their table, but they use Path Builder on their tablet or their laptop or their phone to actually play the game. And so putting your stuff in there is just a way of basically saying, look, this is how people engage with the game. So, yeah.
We're already doing the PDF. Like the PDF in the book is a guaranteed, like, whether it's a physical book or PDF book, like that's being done. Like we're not at the point, like even I'm not going to go there. It's like, oh, we're literally just doing just doing Foundry module, or we're just doing a Nexus module. I'm like, no, that's too far. Going to be a few more years. It's not going to be as far as you think, but for now it's too far, because people still want the PDFs. But we at least always do. I mean, I think every single thing we do, everything we do is always in Foundry. It's always in Path Builder, and there's always a PDF for it. Not always a physical book, but there's always those. And that is a lot of where the industry is going. And yes, we could also do it in others, but I won't get into, because like there's Roll20, and then there's Fantasy Grounds and blah, blah, blah. But, we can do a lot with Foundry, and I won't get into it, but Foundry is the technology in Foundry is A++.
Sure.
As the technology person who's doing this whole life, when I saw Foundry, I saw how they built it, and I see the professionalism and the code, the way they do checking codes. And I was like, okay, this is like Google level. Like, this is like an incredibly high level sophistication that you don't see pretty much anywhere. And I was like, these guys know what they're doing. I'm putting my eggs into this.
Yeah, you're running up the score now, Stephen. Super Princess, our recent adventurer and supporter of the channel, threw another super chat in there. They said, amazing stream. I'm an RFC backer. Highly impressed here. So we love to see it. We love to see it.
And we got Role Playing Debbie too.
Oh yeah, and of course our good friend Role Playing Debbie. I require my players use Path Builder, and I deeply emphasize to use a system without a builder. And look, this is me being gatekeepy. I agree with Claude, right? I think it was Claude. I miss the live games in person with only paper. Right now we're playing Abomination Vaults at my buddy's house on Friday nights. We get together in person. We've got paper. We've got books. Bob plays off of his tablet, but the rest of us are all on paper sheets. I love it. You're absolutely right, Claude. But I'll be the first to admit that there are times and there are places where I go, this game is got too many moving parts, and it's a little difficult and a little bit unwieldy to try to keep a handle on it. And it's very true. So
here, I have a mini story, a 30-second story, is that I was going to do a play by post game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a long time ago, like 20 years ago.
So it's the fastest growing segment of the Knights of Last Call Patreon. Is our play by post.
And who was the very first official lodge for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Digital Lodge? Roll for Combat, that's right. Very first one. It was the first one for Foundry, because we decided, I was like on vacation, I was like, you know what, I really like play by post, let me see if this takes off. Meanwhile, 1,000 games later, it took off. No,
I mean, we've got London here in chat, and London is sort of the London and our friend Galarian in Depth are sort of the runners of our play by post systems. And we got a lot of people who play
they love it.
They love it because they don't have time to play, sit down for 5 hours once a week, twice a week. Like they just can't, it can't do it. But can they occasionally chime in on a Discord or like a forum and put in some, usually a lot of role playing and a lot of like character conversation. And you could do it throughout the day at your pace that you think. In fact, actually,
it's fun.
When I did TPK Con,
a lot of fun.
My interview was with the RPG Sage, who does he creates bots that run play by post, and he became like a big supporter of ours. We invited him over onto because of the interview, and he set us up with RPG Sage stuff, and he's been able to like customize it and tweak it to our specific Patreon Discord's needs because he likes what we're doing over there so much. And so
quick,
London says Randall is a boss. So shout out to Randall from RPG Sage because the RPG Sage tool has really been successful for us to get our play by post stuff going.
So real quick, I was going to do play by post, and I posted somewhere on one of the message boards. I think it was probably Paizo, and I said that if anyone wants to play, you have to use your characters in Path Builder. Sorry, in Hero Lab, and they were like, and I got flack, like, why do you need Hero Lab? How dare you even require Hero Lab? Blah blah blah. And I was a big Hero Lab fan back then, and I'm like, well, and this is for Pathfinder First Edition, and I was like, well, because I guarantee that you are building your characters wrong. And second of all, at the time I was using D20, not D20, I forgot the name. It was a VTT that imported Hero Lab directly into it, and I was going to use it for pictures and stuff because it was like play by post with pictures. And I was like, I just need it because that's the way I play. And I got into this big argument with the guy, and he's like, I can do it. I said, I guarantee you give me your first level character. I'm not even going to say fifth, and I will find at least one error on it. And he took me up on it, and I put it in, and I sent it back and go, here's the 3 errors from your character.
There you go. Ryan Winners with a $2 super chat from Swiss francs. We learned that CHF. We learned that with Mark. Did not include a message, but maybe showing their support. So thank you so much for that, Ryan. Yeah. Appreciate it. And then Stephen Boothby trying to catch up the distance says $5. We'll have to catch up on the VOD later, but looks like the stream covered some interesting topics. And you know what? I think we did. I think we kind of got all over. We covered some serious stuff, some not so serious stuff.
You and I were like, what are we going to talk about? I have no idea. And yet it turned out to be a pretty good stream.
Yeah, I thought it was really great. So again, thank you so much to Stephen for coming in. Thanks to everybody.
Anytime.
Thanks to all of you who showed up. We bounced around 90 to 95 people tonight. So love to see you here. If this is your first time here at Night's Last Call, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We go live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, but sometimes we also throw in a secret bonus stream on Mondays or Sundays. You never know in that. So you may want to make sure you're subscribed and notified so that you get that notification if we do go live. And of course, if you want to show your support and love for the Knights of Last Call, the best way to do that is to join our Patreon, because we'd love to have you be part of our private community. You get a lot of other benefits depending on what tier you join in. And of course, if you want to show your support for Roll for Combat, no better way to do that than to hop onto their new Kickstarter for Year of Legends and maybe get back some of that old Dungeon Dragon magazine vibe by getting a fresh, shiny new PDF every month in your Dropbox. All right. Are you just playing Dragon's Lair now?
Yes. Why not? It's look at it. It's so great.
I mean, it's crazy. You know what? I watched a YouTube video today where somebody ran. They were showing Doom. Like became a thing. Like,
no, what's Doom?
Okay.
Yes.
They were showing like how people have hacked Doom, and like
best written game in history.
Somebody was running it on a pregnancy test.
Yes. And you can run it on anything because that's how well it's written.
But it's brilliant. I'm talking about it like a pregnancy test. It had like a little dot matrix screen.
Yes.
And so
I've seen that.
And so they wanted, and so this person had a video where they tried to run Doom off of potatoes. And they had.
I saw that one. I saw that. And Potato Doom. I saw that.
And it was amazing. It was amazing. So
that people have, because it was a John Carmack. He is considered the god of coding, and that thing was so well coded. It's so efficient. There's programs you can use to like test efficiency of coding, and it gives you like a score to like. It's like, okay, well, and now it's done through AI and stuff. And this is way before AI, and his, I think, came out like near perfect. And that was just him in his brain. Yeah. Like he basically wrote the most efficient code possible that anyone could write, and that's why it can run on anything.
Yeah.
It's incredibly well written.
Doom is a classic.
I do see now, because of Halloween, it's like, be careful of your candy bars, because it might have Doom in it, and they show like the candy bar broken open. So instead of like a razor blade, it's like, it might have Doom. Be careful.
Right. So again, thanks everybody for for hanging out with us. Shout out to Ryan Boothby, Great Role Playing Debbie, Super Princess, Paul Hoyrit, D Priest, Love Fist, Self Confessed Cynic, Save Versus, Jonka, Badoom, Corel, Matt W, Claude, John, Henry, Damian Williams. We had a ton of different people throwing some love and support this week, but looks like Stephen was the winner in the end. But really, in the end, we're all the winners, because hopefully
we're all winners.
Hopefully we so look forward to seeing you either on our next stream or maybe in the Discord. Thanks so much, and thanks again to Stephen. Stephen, any final words before I send us out?
Next week on the Roll for Combat stream is going to be very, very, very busy. That's all I'm going to say, but I think you'll be on the stream probably once or twice.
Okay. Apparently I'm
You're
going to be on.
Well, you're going to see. You're going to know. You're going to want to know why, and just be aware next week is going to be a big week.
All right. Well, you heard it from the man, the myth, the legend himself. So you know Stephen. He knows things. So all right. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Combat or Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody. Peace out.
Is there